Chapter 1598. Dream on. The sword spirit snorted. Do you think it's so easy to reach the supreme grade? Even if you're the tribulation sword master, you still need to cultivate, accumulate and gain experience. How can you reach the top in one step? However, less than a quarter of an hour after the sword spirit finished speaking, Chuyang already said strangely, "Sword spirit, I'm already at the peak of 8th grade supreme martial artist now. I'm definitely not joking, I'm absolutely serious. How is this possible?" The sword spirit was instantly petrified. This was too exaggerated. He was already at the peak of 8th grade supreme martial artist. He had just said that it was impossible in his dreams. Could his dreams really come true? Could he really reach the top in one step? Just as Chuyang was shocked and speechless, and the sword spirit was petrified and in disbelief, the spiritual energy in Chuyang's meridians began to gradually boil and slowly accumulate, forming a situation similar to that on the eve of a tsunami. It seemed that if he moved even a little, the mountains would collapse and the earth would split open at any time. Chuyang held his forehead with one hand and sighed softly, not knowing whether it was a blessing or a curse. He smiled bitterly and turned to look at his dantian. With one look he couldn't help but let out a hiss. Previously there were only 100 or so strands of primordial real silk, but now there were more than 1,000 strands. It had actually increased by almost 10 times and seemed to be continuing to increase. When did this thing become so much? What exactly is going on? Chuyang opened his eyes and looked at the sword tassel attached to the back of his hand. He said softly, "Sword tassel, is this also given to me by you?" The sword tassel slid gently across the back of his hand with infinite tenderness. The next moment, Chuyang only felt the internal energy in his body suddenly explode violently. His whole body also seemed to completely shatter at that moment. Even his consciousness turned into stars and scattered all over the sky. Then, an unprecedented feeling of ease arose spontaneously. In the outside world, Chuyang's clothes turned into ashes with the sudden explosion of his internal energy. His whole body was clean and smooth without a trace. With the explosion of his internal energy, spots of black filth suddenly appeared on the surface of Chuyang's body. The black filth gradually increased and gradually covered his whole body. The filth had a pungent smell that made one feel nauseous. Apart from the unpleasant smell, the black filth was almost liquid in nature and extremely viscous. Although it looked black, it gave people a feeling of transparency. Chuyang was completely unaware of all these changes. The true elemental energy in his body was flowing like a clear and transparent river. However, there was an abnormally heavy aura coming from his body. Like the majestic clouds and mountains, the vast earth. At the side, Dukyu let out a heartfelt sigh of envy. Dukyu wasn't unfamiliar with Chuyang's current situation. He had also experienced it before, supreme grade heavenly spirit body refinement. Within his body, his muscles, bones, meridians and organs, all the impurities and impurities within his body were expelled at this moment. Only at this moment would a cultivator have a great opportunity to gain enlightenment. That was the earth realm. Earth level. However, in the Chongtian continent, this heaven-bestowed enlightenment was called heaven-bestowed immortal opportunity. This was because only at the moment of breakthrough would there be such an opportunity to gain enlightenment. If one could grab hold of it, it would be a great opportunity. If one couldn't grab hold of it, then it would be missed forever because it would never appear again. When Dukyu broke through, he had grabbed hold of such an opportunity for a full 15 minutes. As far as he knew, such an opportunity was mostly just a flash in the pan for most people. There weren't many who had more than a normal person's breath. That time he had grabbed hold of it for a full 15 minutes. This time limit could definitely be said to be above the universe, looking down on the past and present. Now, such a heaven-bestowed immortal opportunity had also appeared in Chuyang. Would Chuyang be able to grab hold of this opportunity? If he did, how long would he be able to grab hold of it? Chuyang's state of mind had already entered an extremely mysterious realm at this moment. It was as if he was surrounded by heavy soil, but it was filled with an ancient aura of life. At the moment when he broke through to supreme grade, he finally understood. Why would a supreme grade strength be so terrifying, almost able to stand above all things in the world, almost able to break the laws of nature and be invincible? All of this was because a supreme grade martial artist could already peek into the way of the earth. Chuyang suddenly felt a little ironic. Originally, the entire continent had been talking about the heavenly Tao, and was trying to break through the so-called heavenly Tao. But he didn't expect that all martial artists were actually so far away from the path of the heavenly Tao. As a human, one had to first cultivate the human path. Then, who knew how long it would take before one could talk about the way of the earth? After the way of the earth, it was the way of the heavenly Tao. The way of the heavens. After that, it was the great Tao. But, how could the way of the heavens be so easy to prove? Chu Yang chuckled. He wandered in this land of earth aura that had suddenly appeared and existed for an unknown period of time. He didn't think of anything and didn't even want to get any specific enlightenment from here. His mind was clean, like a piece of white paper without any color, floating freely in this land of earth realm. No heart, no thoughts, no thoughts, no thoughts, no intentions, no desires, no hopes, no fights, no demands, nothing at all. In the surroundings, there was a constant stream of earthy yellow light flying past. Those that stuck to the white paper stuck to it and slipped away from the side just like that, they slipped away. Everything was up to fate. Time passed by quietly just like that, a breath passed by. 2 breaths passed by, 10 breaths passed by, 15 minutes passed by. Yu stood quietly at the side watching Chu Yang attentively. At this moment, the impurities that had appeared on Chu Yang's body due to his advancement to the supreme martial artist level slowly dried up as Chu Yang's cultivation continued to increase. Gradually they left the surface of his skin. In the next moment they scattered into pieces of smelly dust and then disappeared. After a while even the smell was gone. It was as if Chu Yang hadn't gone through such a cleansing of his muscles and marrow. However, if Minister Chu wasn't completely clean, then it would really be as if nothing had happened. Yu believed that even if Chu Yang woke up, he might not be unaware of everything that had just happened. However, his body was definitely different from before and it was very different. If his previous body was the earth, then his current body was the high and mighty sky. This was because the cleansing of the marrow and tendons had truly happened before. Yu couldn't help but sigh. When he had just broken through, he also didn't know about the changes. Until now, when he saw Chu Yang's breakthrough, he knew that he must have experienced such changes before. Not bad, it's been close to 15 minutes. I wonder if he can reach my level. Yu's face revealed an admiring expression. Yu was already very surprised that Chu Yang could retain this kind of enlightenment for such a long time. The innate talent of elves in understanding the nature of the world was far above that of humans. An ordinary elf's comprehension ability was far stronger than that of humans. As a pure-blooded royal elf, Yu naturally thought that his comprehension ability was undoubtedly the strongest. This was the pride of his race. In fact, Yu's pride definitely had the qualifications to be so. Looking at the entire heavenly layer in the past 100,000 years, there were only a few humans who could be compared to Yu. Even the previous masters of the Calamity Sword were far inferior to him. At this moment, seeing that Chu Yang was actually so talented and almost catching up with him, how could he not be shocked? However, he was still lacking by a bit. He should wake up soon. However, as time passed in the next moment, Yu's expression gradually became unsightly. Why isn't it over yet? He's already on par with me. This shouldn't be, it's almost there. After that, Yu was completely stunned. Surpassed me, actually surpassed me. You've already surpassed me. It's time to wake up. After that, 30 minutes passed and Chu Yang still hadn't woken up. 2 hours passed. Chu Yang was still comprehending. While Chu Yang was comprehending, Yu was already petrified. He was so shocked that he was completely speechless. This is a monster. Hiss. Yu sucked in cold air and shook his head repeatedly. This guy is definitely not human. How can a human comprehend for such a long time? This really makes me speechless. Chu Yang didn't know how much time had passed, but he knew that it seemed to have been a long time. Just as he entered the earth realm, he heard a cracking sound coming from his body. When he looked inside himself, he was immediately surprised. He saw that his dantian had actually exploded. The next moment it was reorganized again. His dantian had actually turned into a shape that was very similar to a star. In the center there was a circle. In the circle, a small calamity sword floated quietly. The surroundings were surrounded by patches of primordial real silk that were purple and lustrous. And the outermost part was the corner of a star. One corner was azure in color. Right now it had already filled a little bit of almost 1/10 of the space. As for the others, they were either golden in color, green in color, or only a little bit of each color. As for the corner closest to the azure region, it was earthy yellow in color. Right now, there were countless earthy yellow specks of energy that were densely packed and surging towards the center of the region. Once the khaki-colored energy surged in, it was immediately compressed. Visually, the khaki-colored energy had already filled up about 1/10 of the entire space, which was already slightly larger than the azure space, and the khaki-colored energy was still continuously accumulating inside. What Chu Yang didn't know was, Duke Yu, who was outside, had already lost the ability to speak. It had been a full 6 hours. 6 hours? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. And that freak still seems to be continuing to comprehend. Oh my god. Is he a human or a demon? Even if he's really a demon, he wouldn't be so freakish. Chapter 1599. Back then, he was already considered a peerless genius when he was able to comprehend for a quarter of an hour. He even thought that he was the best in the world. Now he had already spent more than 6 hours. Duke Yu's face was full of tears. This matter was really too much of a blow. Finally, when the 8th hour had just passed, Chu Yang's whole body shook and he woke up. He shook his body and scratched his head. He said in confusion, "I'm so tired. Why is my body so heavy? Why are my legs so sore? What's going on?" Duke Yu lowered his head speechlessly. "You've been standing for 8 hours with only your physical strength? How can your body not be heavy? How can your legs not be sore? Everyone will feel sore. Even if you're a monster, you'll still feel heavy and sore. How's your dantian now?" Sword Spirit clearly saw that the yellow light in Chu Yang's divine sense suddenly flickered. "There's a strange change. It's shaped like a star. It's very strange." Chu Yang touched his chin and was somewhat puzzled. Sword Spirit let out an sound and said with some worry, "Your dual and 5 elements physique has finally taken shape. The road ahead is bleak." Chu Yang didn't understand. He had just obtained an amazing breakthrough and was feeling proud of it. How could the road ahead be bleak? Today's moment of pride doesn't mean eternity. In the future, your road of advancement will be very troublesome, very troublesome. Sword Spirit said, "You're the successor of the heaven-splitting divine technique. This is the most difficult technique to advance in the world. At the same time, it's also the most powerful technique. This in itself restricts your cultivation. The more powerful the technique, the more demanding it is. But not only that, you also have a dual and 5 elements physique. Most people only need 1 or 2 elements to advance in their cultivation. But you, every time you advance, you need to have all 7 elements. Moreover, the quantity of each element is 7 times that of others. It's 7 times more than others. In this way, although you're invincible among your peers and can even defeat stronger opponents, your road of advancement will be 40 times more difficult than others under the same conditions. 70, 40 times, do you understand?" The Sword Spirit sighed. "You've just broken through and reached the peak of what a heavenly layer practitioner can achieve. You who are in the prime of your life may not understand what I'm saying or may not believe it. But when you reach the celestial palace, you'll truly understand the true meaning of these 70 to 40 times. To use the simplest analogy, the person you can beat up this year after a year of growth can easily beat you up. The difference is that big." Chu Yang grinned. Sure enough, he didn't take it to heart. He said in an incomparably relaxed manner, "So what?" The Sword Spirit was stunned. "This means that your path will be extremely difficult." Chu Yang insipidly said, "So what if it's rugged? I'll walk my own path. Others also have others' paths. Their paths may be the same. But I'll walk my own path. So why should I consider others? Don't you think it's redundant?" He laughed loudly and walked forward. "Even though I've come this far, I've actually put in more than 70 to 40 times more effort than others." The Sword Spirit was stunned. He knew that this guy was heartless, but he didn't expect him to be this heartless. In front of him was the Elven Empress throne. The 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword had appeared from here. Chu Yang had already sensed that there was still an unusually large amount of energy hidden here. And this energy must be the benefit of the 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword. The Tribulation Sword chirped cheerfully. Although the sword chirped, it also carried with it a boundless murderous aura. Duke Yu looked at Chu Yang from the side. He couldn't help but say softly, "Chu Yang, your Dao heart needs to be stable first. If your Dao heart isn't stable, it's easy for unforeseen events to happen." Chu Yang stopped in his tracks and said with a smile, "Brother Yu, you don't have to worry. I've already stabilized it." "Already stabilized it?" The corners of Duke Yu's mouth twitched, seemingly intentionally or unintentionally. "Back then I spent half a month to stabilize it. You haven't even done anything yet, but you've already stabilized it?" Suddenly, the Tribulation Sword let out an unusually intense sword chirp. It soared into the sky and became a few thousand feet long in the air. Then it came crashing down like a bolt of lightning. Before Duke Yu and Chu Yang could react, the Elven Empress throne had already been completely shattered by the impact of the Tribulation Sword. It wasn't just the Elven Empress throne. There was also a deep hole in the ground. With a poof, 10 rays of light flew out from the big hole. The thickest ray of light entered Chu Yang's body like lightning. As for the remaining light, it flew out like a meteor and disappeared in an instant. Outside, Mo Tianji and the others were chatting and laughing. Chu Yang accompanied Duke Yu to explore the Elven City without any risk. Everyone already had a consensus on this, so naturally they weren't worried at all. In fact, Chu Yang and Duke Yu had been away for a long time. It had already been more than half a month. Aside from working hard to improve their own cultivation, Mo Tianji and the others had also found a lot of fun. Previously they had teased each other and fought in groups. Now they were doing something else. Everyone sat in a circle. In the middle, a few racks were set up. Below them, a bonfire was blazing. On the racks, many wild rabbits were being roasted. They were already tender yellow in color and emitted a tempting fragrance. Luo Kudi and GMO, these two great gods, were fully focused on the great task of roasting the meat. Their mouths were slurping with saliva. For these two gluttons, it seemed that there was nothing more important than the roasted wild rabbits in front of them. As for their image and whatnot, these two completely ignored it. Eating was the most important thing, so what was image? Once one's cultivation reached the supreme level, one could practice Inedia for a period of time. This period wasn't long, but it was a special ability of supreme-level martial artists. Gu Duxing and the others were all trying out this novel cultivation method. Even Mo Qingwu and Mo Tianji were trying Inedia. Transcending the mortal world was something that only immortals could do. Everyone had long yearned for it. Now that they had the ability to do it, how could they not fulfill their long-cherished wish? However, Second Master Ji and Second Master Luo were accustomed to eating big fish and big meat. The small animals in the elf forest were considered to be very unlucky. It just so happened that there were a lot of wild game in the elf forest that could be eaten at any time. Moreover, the meat quality of the wild game in the elf forest was also not something that the secular world could compare to. It was extraordinary and tasted very good. These two people didn't skip a single meal. They ate until their mouths and hands were covered in oil. In this half a month's time, they seemed to have gained a lot of fat on their bodies. These two have been in there for a long time. Mo Tianji looked at the 17 lines he drew on the ground and said softly, "Today is already the afternoon of the 17th day." Gu Duxing grunted and muttered to himself, 17 days? It's already been 17 days, however, a sharp sword light flashed in his eyes. Mo Tianji shook his head and stopped him. He said, "I believe that there won't be any accidents. Brother, you definitely won't harm boss." Gu Duxing snorted lightly and said, "If something really happens to boss, I will slaughter the entire dark bamboo." Mo Tianji nodded in agreement. When Dong Wushang heard this, he suddenly raised his head. Mo Tianji smiled. It's fine, Dong Wushang snorted and said, "How can it be fine? I clearly heard it just now." "What? Boss is actually in danger this time?" "You only listened to the third but not the fourth. I was just making an assessment just now. When did I say that Boss Chu is in danger?" Mo Tianji rolled his eyes in annoyance. These few fellows were a little stubborn. They clearly knew that nothing would happen, but they still couldn't help but think of the worst-case scenario. Then, they gritted their teeth. It was probably because they had too much free time that they were looking for trouble for themselves. However, at this moment, a mysterious and unusual aura suddenly rose from the ground. All the brothers were shocked and became alert. They weren't afraid of anything happening now. They were just worried that nothing would happen. GMO and Luo Kudi, these two gluttons, also stood up. They gave up on the delicious wild hare that was about to be roasted and pressed their hands on the hilt of their swords. Eating was indeed important, but some things were even more important than the sky. Especially things related to Boss Chu. Then they saw 4 mysterious lights suddenly rushing out from the ground. Boom. The next moment, extremely bright lights flashed and lit up the world. The light was so dazzling that even the light of the sun was suppressed. In that area of extreme brilliance, everyone clearly saw that the previous 4 lights were divided into 1 red and 3 white. The red light was the most magnificent, but its power was several times that of the other 3 lights. It connected the sky and the earth, penetrating through the universe. However, this aurora phenomenon only lasted for a moment before the extreme brilliance dissipated. Only the most magnificent red light paused for a moment, as if it was looking for a target. Suddenly, it bloomed with a dreamlike blurry brilliance and actually rushed into Mo Qingwu's delicate body at lightning speed. This change happened too suddenly. Mo Qingwu only had time to let out an "ah" before the red light completely disappeared into her body without a trace. It was as if it had never appeared before. This series of unforeseen events had happened too quickly. In fact, it would be too slow to describe it as swift as a clap of thunder. It wasn't just Wu. Everyone else didn't have enough time to react. By the time they finally regained their senses, everything had already happened. In fact, it had already ended. For the first time, Tianji felt that the situation was completely out of his control. He had completely lost control of this sudden and unforeseen event. His heart was in a state of panic. He strode towards Wu and asked nervously, "Little Wu, how are you? Do you feel unwell anywhere?" A perplexed look appeared on Wu's face. She said softly, hesitantly and uncertainly, "I didn't feel anything out of the ordinary. Everything happened too quickly, really too quickly. I really didn't feel anything." The little girl was a little flustered. Her words were also a little incoherent. Chapter 1600. Shiyun rubbed his chin and furrowed his brows as he guessed. Up until now, Tribulation's last trial has not been decided. According to Bosch Chu, there should be the 8th fragment of the Tribulation sword here. That light that suddenly shot out might be the change caused by the 8th fragment. However, that light only chose Xiao Wu. Let me make a bold assumption. Could Xiao Wu be Tribulation's last trial? Tianji pondered and considered the possibility of Shiyun's words. Everyone's eyes lit up. If Shiyun's guess was true, then the Tribulation was complete. It was a great blessing that the Tribulation combined. However, Rui Badong liked to disagree with Shiyun the most. He said, "If those few rays of light really represent tribulations, and little Wu has obtained one of them, then it's the last tribulation. Then what do the remaining 3 rays of light mean? Could it be that there's still a 10th and 11th tribulation?" Everyone was speechless. What Rui Badong said made sense. Yes, the other 3 had flown away without a trace. Who knew where they went? If they judged the tribulation based on this, it would be too far-fetched. At this stage, it was indeed impossible to judge what the 4 lights meant. What did they symbolize? At the same time, Chuyang also felt something in his heart, or perhaps his body felt something. After a white light flew out, it silently turned back. It seemed that it had just gone outside for a stroll. Then, with a schwa sound, it disappeared into Chu Yang's body. Chuyang was startled. He thought, "What's going on? Did I get rewarded again? Why did I say again? Who asked me to be rewarded more than once during this period of time?" However, upon closer inspection, he found that the white light had indeed entered his body. However, he wasn't the one who was rewarded. Because the white light had really entered the tribulation space in his body. It had entered Wu Qianqian's body, which was in a state of deep sleep. The person who rewarded him was Wu Qianqian. Chuyang was startled. He pondered for a long time but still couldn't figure out what was going on. The only conclusion he could come up with was that the white light had gone out for a walk. It realized that its target was actually the tribulation space in his body. Then it turned back. However, the territory of this white light was too high. No external force could enter his tribulation space. This white light was an exception. It was really impressive. Iron Cloud Imperial Palace, lower 3 heavens. Tai Budian, the Emperor of Iron Cloud, was leaning against the railing and looking out, thinking about her lover. Although Chuyang had come and left in a hurry previously, he had left Tai Budian with endless sweet memories. When Chuyang left, Tai Budian had stood here to send him off. It was precisely because of that day that Tai Budian had developed a new habit. Every once in a while he would come here and look into the distance. Even though he knew that he was just waiting in vain, he still had hope. Or perhaps that heartless person would suddenly return? However, as the days went by, Chuyang still didn't return. Over time, Tai Budian also developed this habit. The guards stood far behind. No one dared to make the slightest movement. They all knew that the emperor must not be disturbed at this time. They all held their breaths and did not dare to speak. Are you okay?" Tai Butian's eyes flashed with tenderness. He looked at the distant horizon and sighed in his heart. If she was willing to abandon everything and follow him, then perhaps she wouldn't have to suffer the pain of lovesickness, right? But how could I bear to do it? Let's go back. Tai Budian turned slightly and was about to return to the palace. At this moment, there was a sudden exclamation, "Your Majesty! Your Majesty, be careful." In the horizon, a ray of magnificent white light suddenly fell. It was like a white rainbow that stretched across the entire sky, traversing thousands of miles. In an instant, it had already reached the top of Ironcloud Citadel. However, in an instant, it transformed into the most graceful and luxurious bright yellow color. It was like an emperor's robe, majestic beyond compare. The bright yellow light flashed and the magnificent light directly entered Tai Butian's body. At this moment, the exclamations of the crowd didn't even have time to die down. Everything had happened too suddenly and ended too quickly. Tai Butian only felt a little dizzy. As the person involved, she still didn't understand what had happened. She couldn't help but frown and ask, "What happened just now?" "Congratulations, Your Majesty. This is the energy of a divine dragon descending from the heavens and entering your body. Dragon energy entering your body. You are the master of the heavens. The royal family of Iron Cloud will be protected by the heavens. We will rule the world and live forever." The military officials and guards near and far knelt down at the same time. The strange phenomenon in the sky this time should have happened to His Majesty the Emperor. This was a great auspicious sign. Ning Tianye, who was concentrating on cultivating in a secret place in the royal palace, frowned. He raised his eyes and looked at the sky thoughtfully. He frowned and thought for a long time, but he couldn't think of a reason. He could conclude that the white rainbow had nothing to do with the so-called dragon energy. However, he couldn't really explain it. Moreover, the strangest thing was that although the white light had nothing to do with the dragon energy, it carried an unlimited amount of the Emperor's energy. Why was this? Ning Tianye was also confused. The only thing he could be sure of was that the white rainbow didn't have any negative effects. That was enough. As for the other strange phenomenon in the royal palace, little Tai Yang was still in the pool, continuing his daily game. His little face was a little dignified now. That strange tree was placed in the water again. Those transparent beads rushed up and up with the water, then broke and fell down. Life and death, life and death, life and death. There were also struggles, giving up, escaping, and so on. As for the white light, the little guy didn't seem to notice it and ignored it. In the distant heavenly imperial court, the never-before-smelled Jiangnan, the small and exquisite secular little house. Zi Sheqing, who hadn't been seen for a long time, was sitting quietly in a black bamboo forest. She was feeling the qi of heaven and earth to nourish her own qi. Ever since she had successfully cultivated her body and transformed into a human, Zi Sheqing could feel that even her temperament seemed to have changed a lot. However, once the demonic aura in her body had dissipated, it was really not an easy task to gather spiritual energy as a human and start the path of cultivation again. Until now, even with the rich experience of the past, the excellent cultivation place and the cultivation resources, he had only recovered half of his cultivation in the past. Since returning here, Zi Sheqing had been concentrating on her cultivation. She didn't come out of seclusion and used all her effort and perseverance to recover her cultivation. However, in order to transform into a human, her demon core had been destroyed. The speed of her cultivation was very slow. She could only slowly cultivate her 3 dantian as a human and proceed step by step. Zi Sheqing was a master of cultivation. She was already aware of this process and was not in a hurry. She knew where her foundation was. As long as she was willing to put in the effort, there would be a day when she would succeed again. Especially now that she had shed her demonic body, in essence, she had truly begun to walk the path of great Tao. Her future was bright and smooth. During this period, the demon race's Grand Master, who was once in the death tribulations, had also recovered. He came to Jiangnan and visited her almost every 3 days. He didn't mention anything about pursuing her, but just chatted and talked about their cultivation experiences and interesting things in the martial world. Zi Sheqing was very annoyed. She had gone through countless hardships and endured so many hardships before she could cultivate her body and become a human. The main reason was to draw a clear line with the demon race. How could she accept his feelings now? Not to mention the fact that he already had another person in his heart. However, the other party's status was so high and he had the power of the entire demon race behind him. Zi Sheqing really couldn't reject him outright and could only pretend to be polite. Every time they spoke a few words, she would hurriedly ask him to leave. She used a tactful way to reject him. "I have no interest in you. Don't come and pester me anymore." Unexpectedly, the demon race's Grand Master was defeated time and time again, but the more he was defeated, the braver he became and the more interested he became in her. It was as if being defeated here and being rejected time and time again had ignited his fighting spirit. Zi Sheqing couldn't wait to crush this fly to death. However, firstly, the other party's status was too high and she couldn't do that. Secondly, this demon race's Grand Madam was also extremely powerful and she wasn't his match yet. Moreover, this demon race's Grand Master was too polite and well-mannered. He followed the rules and was very amiable. She didn't even have a reason to be angry and could only feel depressed. At this thought, Zi Sheqing couldn't help but sigh. There would be a lot of trouble in this matter. was really a headache. Coincidentally, at this moment, a mystical white light came from the sky like a bolt of lightning. Its speed was extremely fast, and by the time he noticed it, the white light had already entered his body. Although Zi Shecheng's cultivation had only recovered to its normal level, it was still incomparable to a heaven-layer cultivator. After this change, she couldn't help but be stunned. Just when she was about to activate her cultivation to protect herself, she inexplicably felt that the mark of the great Tao in her body was in a state of loosening. This change made Zi Shecheng overjoyed. The loosening of the mark of the great Tao meant that her cultivation was just around the corner. However, there were still a few more surprises that came one after another. Previously, because she had to shed her demon body and transform into a human body, the original demon core naturally had to be destroyed. This was an inevitable process of a demon body transforming into a human body. Zi Shecheng destroyed her own demon core with great perseverance. However, although the demon core was broken, the demon origin was not destroyed. The destroyed demon core dispersed into a majestic demon aura and remained in her body. Zi Shecheng was helpless about this. She could only slowly erase it bit by bit and transform it into the most primitive spiritual qi. Then she could condense it and purify it. It could be said that the source of her cultivation in the past had now become the biggest obstacle to her improvement. Zi Shecheng's cultivation stagnated, and this had a lot to do with the demon origin. However, as soon as this mystical white light appeared, a huge change suddenly occurred. It was as if a scorching sun had appeared in the sky, instantly dispersing the haze. However, as it circulated within his body, the boundless demonic qi transformed from the demon core was instantly swept away and transformed into the purest form of Yuan qi. Chapter 1601. As the demonic aura disappeared completely, the biggest obstacle to Zi Shecheng's cultivation had disappeared. It had even turned into a great help. Zi Shecheng's body trembled. She could clearly feel that her cultivation was increasing rapidly like a river bursting through a dam. Or rather, it was recovering. It only took 2 to 3 breaths of time. The white mist above her head was dense and mysterious. The next moment, the white fog above her head turned into red, white, and yellow flower buds. The 3 flowers bloomed slowly above her head. Other than the 3 flowers blooming, there were also 5 mysterious and unusual auras spiraling and rising, churning in the air above her head. Zi Shecheng seemed to have already known how to deal with them. She opened her mouth slightly and inhaled. The 5 auras were all sucked into her nose and mouth. It was the 3 flowers above head, 5 qis collecting, and it was complete overnight. Zi Shecheng's face lit up. She did not know where the white light came from and why it had such a magical effect. But she knew clearly that her cultivation had recovered to its original peak. It had even improved. After all, the mark of the great Tao had loosened. That was something more worth celebrating than dissolving all the demonic aura. Perhaps today was really Zi Shecheng's lucky day because the surprises so far were at best just the beginning. The next moment, the power in her body was still rising steadily, increasing gradually, and actually continuously hitting new heights. Such progress was unbelievable. It was as if she had become a god. Zi Shecheng was shocked. She quickly put away her joyful mood and focused her mind. She started to operate her cultivation. After a long time, there was a loud boom. Crack, crack, crack. Zi Shecheng's bones made a sound. Zi Shecheng opened her eyes slowly. Her eyes were shining. It was not like they were solid. Instead, it had truly condensed into a solid form and was 3 feet tall. Heaven level. She had finally reached the realm of heaven level. She looked up at the sky. Reaching the realm of heaven level was a happy thing. But it was accompanied by another danger. Reaching the realm of heaven level would definitely be accompanied by a thunder tribulation. In the sky, clouds swarmed in from all directions. In an instant, dark clouds covered the city. Lightning flashed in the dark clouds. They rotated slowly and were ready to strike. A horrifying heavens might suddenly reach the top. It was as if the whole earth was going to be flattened. That terrifying feeling caused everyone within a radius of several hundred miles to tremble in fear. Humans could not be compared to heaven. So, once one's cultivation reached the realm of heaven level, heaven would send down a thunder tribulation accordingly. From this moment onwards, one's cultivation was truly a battle with heaven, snatching one's own Tao from heaven's great Tao. It was fun for humans to fight with heaven. However, this pleasure came at the price of one's life. Zi Shecheng's face was expressionless. Her clothes fluttered even though there was no wind. She was actually calm and composed. All around them, countless people's faces were filled with shock as they looked up at the sky. Looking at the tribulation clouds in the sky, the heavenly tribulation had reappeared. Which expert had actually broken through to such an enviable level here? Ever since the beautiful lady in white escorted Zi Sheqing back to the south, she had fallen in love with the elegance and quietness of this place and had been staying here. At this moment she was also the first to fly out of her room. After all, her cultivation was very high. When he looked over, he couldn't help but be shocked. It's actually a heavenly tribulation? It shouldn't be. There are no such experts in seclusion anywhere. If there were, how could I not know about it? How could this be? Then he asked loudly, "Little Z, how are you now? Are you okay? There is a cultivator going through a thunder tribulation here. Let's leave quickly. If there is any delay, we will be implicated." This was not a mistake in the lady's judgment. Even when Zi Sheqing's cultivation was at its peak in the past, there was still a long way to go before reaching the heaven stage. Moreover, now that her cultivation had regressed greatly, the lady in white would never have thought that Zi Sheqing had reached the heaven stage. But the next moment, Zi Sheqing's voice was heard. "Don't worry, I'm fine. It's just that I've just broken through the realm of heaven level. You should leave quickly. Otherwise, the thunder tribulation will see you as an enemy," the beautiful woman in white thought quickly. Without hesitation, she turned into a streamer and flew out of the little house of the red dust. If she was regarded as a joint enemy by the thunder tribulation, it wouldn't be a joke. The thunder tribulation would be doubled at every turn. Moreover, it wouldn't stop until she was dead. Even with the ability of the beautiful woman in white, she didn't dare to try it lightly. Until she landed outside, the woman was still in shock and doubt. She muttered to herself, "She broke through? How could she break through? Wasn't this too inconceivable? With such a long distance, it would be an accident to break through within 100 years. How could she break through to the realm of heaven level now? I don't understand. The woman was not to be blamed for losing her composure. Zi Sheqing's breakthrough was really against common sense. To the woman who was very familiar with Zi Sheqing's current level of cultivation, it was naturally a strange thing that she could not understand. Another ray of white light flashed and the demon clan landed in front of the woman. "What's going on? Is there a great cultivator hiding near us? I've used my divine sense to check these few days. There is no such cultivator nearby. There is no great cultivator hiding, but she broke through," the woman said softly. Her voice was still filled with disbelief and surprise. "She broke through? You mean Miss Zi Sheqing broke through to the realm of heaven level?" The demon clan was shocked. He exclaimed, "How is this possible? Are you kidding? Kidding? How can I joke about this? The truth is right in front of us. What's impossible?" The woman sighed deeply. This little Z is indeed the #1 genius in the history of the demon clan. She turned the impossible into a great achievement. What a pity. What a pity. The pity mentioned by the woman was naturally referring to Zi Sheqing's withdrawal from the demon clan. However, the demon clan's gaze was even more heated. Such a beauty, such an achievement, such a talent, such a beauty, how can I give up? At this moment, a white figure floated. Zi Sheqing, who was in the little red dust house, rose into the air. She charged towards the thunder tribulation in the sky. At the same time, the thunder tribulation moved. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. Countless flashes of lightning shot out like arrows, vowing to destroy the mortal who dared to blaspheme its power. At the moment when her body came into contact with the flashes of lightning, she felt an unprecedented vibration. A long-lost longing flashed across Zi Sheqing's heart. At such a moment of interaction between man and heaven, one's senses were exceptionally sensitive. That extraordinary figure suddenly appeared in Zi Sheqing's heart at this moment. Sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. Dressed in black, he was proud and unyielding and had a graceful demeanor. "Is this mystical white light because of you? It must be." Zi Sheqing, who had given her the most ideal answer, revealed an extremely gentle and elegant smile. She waved her long sleeves and clashed with the flashes of lightning without backing down. Boom. Heaven's continent. Fairy forest. Regarding the previous accident, Mo Qingwu suddenly had a red light enter her body. Mo Tianji and the rest were puzzled by this and could not figure it out. What exactly is going on? This is too strange. It's better to be safe than sorry. Mo Tianji subconsciously took out the copper coin of destiny and prepared to divine to find out what was going on. After all, this was related to little Wu. He had to be cautious. The mental cultivation method was already activated and the copper coin was already in mid-air. It even started to flicker with golden light. Suddenly something strange happened again. In a trance, the sky suddenly fell into darkness. Pitch-black clouds had appeared out of nowhere. The entire sky was completely covered, and not a single trace of light could be seen. What's going on? Is it another extraterrestrial demon? Ao Shiyun and Dong Wuxiang suddenly stood up. One on the left and one on the right, as if they were facing a great enemy. It was no wonder that the two of them had such doubts. Everyone else also had the same thought. The current situation was very similar to the situation of the heavenly demons. At this moment, the entire heavenly layer was plunged into darkness. Everyone was in a state of panic. What's going on? What's going on? Why has the entire sky turned dark? Could it be that a demon is about to appear? What's going on recently? Oh my God, this is too scary, isn't it? I'm so anxious. The big clans? Everyone was also looking up at the sky, but their thoughts were different from ordinary people. The reason was simple. Previously, when Chu Yang appeared to solve the current crisis, even if Xiao Qinyu denied it, it still gave the big clans a warning that there was an extraterrestrial demon invading the heavens. In fact, the extraterrestrial demon was the common enemy of the big clans and Chu Yang. They all wanted to get rid of it, but to the big clans, Chu Yang was even more dangerous. He was the destined one who would destroy the big clans. Therefore, even if Chu Yang first expressed his goodwill, the big clans were unwilling to accept it. Yi clan. The Yi clan master, Yi Qinshan, looked at the sky with a gloomy expression. He couldn't understand it now. Was this change caused by the extraterrestrial demon? Or was it actually caused by the Tribulation Sword Master? Yi Qinshan was very gratified when Yi Zue suddenly broke free from the demon heart and returned to the clan to tell them what happened. But the news that Yi Zue brought back also made Yi Qinshan's heart as heavy as lead. The extraterrestrial demon had really appeared in the Heavens continent. Also, the Dharma Supreme, who was almost the #1 person in the Heavens continent, also cultivated demonic techniques and belonged to the extraterrestrial demon lineage. In such troubled times, how could such an unimaginable thing suddenly appear on the table? The Tribulation Sword Master was about to succeed, and this was already a headache for the big clans. Who would have thought that another extraterrestrial demon would appear at this juncture? Where should we go from here? Yi Qinshan's mind was in a mess. For a moment, his mind was in a mess and he couldn't figure out what to do. Perhaps, it's time to gather everyone in the big clans and discuss it together. Yi Qinshan sighed heavily. If this goes on, I'm afraid it's really over. Everything is over. Chapter 1602. However, just when everyone in the heavenly layer heavens was in a state of shock, all of a sudden, 10 streaks of white light shot down from the sky in the midst of the endless darkness. These 10 beams of white light appeared from nowhere. They were extremely majestic, connecting the heavens and the earth, piercing through the universe. It was as if 10 heavenly pillars had suddenly appeared in the heavenly layer. They stood between the heavens and the earth in such a majestic and domineering manner. The next moment, an awe-inspiring sword chime resounded through the sky. The 10 beams of light intersected with each other and transformed into a huge sword, silently and majestically lying horizontally in the sky. Everyone who witnessed this scene couldn't help but be shocked, and their eyebrows twitched. Yi Qinshan stared at the strange phenomenon in the sky and closed his eyes tiredly. He muttered, "This strange phenomenon is indeed caused by the Tribulation Sword Master. This means that the 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword has been found. The Tribulation Sword Master is close to being invincible. It's hard to find an opponent in the heavenly layer. This also means that the end of the big clans is near, and the end is near." In the elf forest, Mo Chenji and the others stared at the sky in shock. For a moment they were also greatly shocked. The sudden appearance of the 10 beams of light was like 10 suns suddenly appearing in the darkness, illuminating the heavens and the earth brighter than ever before. However, only they could tell that these 10 beams of light actually didn't descend. They were still a little distance away from connecting to the earth. Of course, only Mo Chenji and the others knew the truth. That was because the 10 pillars of light were right above their heads. What's going on? Could it be that the sudden darkness isn't caused by the heavenly demon but by Boss? Gu Duxing frowned and asked. Should be. I reckon that Boss has already found the 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword. It's because of the return of the 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword that caused this strange phenomenon. Mo Chenji calmly kept the copper coin in his hand. That's a good thing. This thing in the sky is also a good thing. Since it's a good thing, why isn't it descending? To keep us in suspense? Regarding this question, actually all the brothers had the same thought. From the looks of it, it was obviously going to descend. Everyone already had a feeling in their hearts, But why wasn't it descending? It didn't seem right to keep it in suspense, right? City of Elves? After that white light entered his body, Chuyang suddenly became still. His entire body became motionless as if he had lost his soul. Duke Yu looked at him in surprise, even though he knew that this should be the phenomenon of the Calamity Sword. But she didn't know why Chuyang didn't move. Fortunately, she was right beside him. Fortunately, she and Chuyang were the only living people in the City of Elves. If two enemies appeared at this time, Chuyang would be at their mercy. Naturally, Duke Yu didn't know that Chuyang's current divine sense was very strong. He had already entered the tribulation space. And this time he didn't come in on his own accord. Instead, he had suddenly and inexplicably entered it. In the tribulation space, the white light that had broken through the space before was now standing tall. Within the white light, there seemed to be a faint figure. Although the silhouette was faint and almost indistinct, it exuded a boundless majesty, causing people to have the urge to prostrate themselves on the ground and kowtow. In front of the white light, the sword spirit stood there with a pale face. He stood beside Chuyang. "What's going on? What's wrong with you?" Chuyang asked. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit was an almost godlike existence, but the current situation seemed to be very bad for the sword spirit. This situation was rather strange. Chuyang asked the sword spirit, but the sword spirit unexpectedly didn't answer. He just raised his head and looked at him without any intention to speak. Chuyang's heart trembled, and he immediately felt an unprecedented sense of danger. Because the sword spirit's eyes at this moment, there was hope, but there was also despair and sadness. That was a strange expression of having already resigned to fate. Chuyang suddenly understood something. The previous few sword fragments were basically accompanied by some danger or tortuous experience when they were obtained. But this time they didn't experience any danger or test. Chuyang had long felt that this was abnormal. The 8th fragment of the Calamity Sword was the most important part. How could it be obtained so smoothly, and even obtain such terrifying benefits? Looking at the current situation, perhaps the test that hadn't arrived yet, or perhaps the checkpoint, was here? Don't think blindly. I called you in. The faint figure in the white light suddenly began to speak. His voice was very calm and indifferent. However, Chuyang could clearly hear that this voice actually contained an endless domineering aura, an overwhelming evil aura, and a boundless domineering might that looked down on the world and revolved the universe. Those who submit to me will prosper, and those who resist me will perish. Who are you? Chuyang raised his head and looked at the white light. Who am I? Good question, ha. The figure laughed evilly. I'm naturally the person who created the Calamity Sword. The person who created the Calamity Sword. Chuyang couldn't help but gasp at this answer. His eyes widened. The figure in front of him was actually the super powerful person who could destroy half of the universe in one battle? The person who created the Calamity Sword casually and dominated the fate of the entire heaven-level continent for 100,000 years? And now, the legendary figure was right in front of him? Yes, as you thought, it's me. The person said lightly, since you already know it's me, why aren't you kneeling down? Why are you so insensible? If it weren't for the last sentence, Chuyang really wanted to kneel down and worship the person in front of him. No matter what, the other party had created the Calamity Sword and had done him a great favor. Moreover, he was a super powerful person, an unparalleled expert, an absolute senior, the senior of seniors. Chuyang felt that kneeling down was something he should do. Even if it was just to show respect, it was something he should do. However, the other party had taken the initiative to ask him to kneel down. Chuyang was infinitely disgusted by this request. If I'm willing to kneel to you, that's my business. That's my respect for you. But if you want me to kneel, I won't kneel. Want me to kneel, and I want to kneel, were two different concepts. It was a completely different concept. They were polar opposites. I want to kneel out of my instinctive respect. But if you want me to kneel, you're treating me like a slave. There was no reciprocity at all. So what if it's you? Do I have to kneel just because you want me to? On what basis? Who do you think you are? Chuyang stood upright, his whole body as straight as a sword. Even in the face of such a peerless almighty being, his unyielding spirit was still awe-inspiring. Who am I? I'm the person who created the Calamity Sword and gave you the capital to roam the world. I'm the person who created the layered heaven divine technique and gave you a limitless future. The white figure said coldly, I have a high position and power. With just a word, I can turn the world upside down. My strength is superb. With just a finger, I can sweep the world. My seniority is high. In the world, I'm the only one. If I ask you to kneel, You won't kneel? Chu Yang said indifferently, you created the Calamity Sword and the Layered Heaven Divine Technique. You've created me. I should be grateful to you for this, but it can't be a reason for you to make me kneel. Also, I believe that even without me, there will be other Calamity Sword masters. He rolled his eyes and sneered, moreover, the Calamity Sword you created has toyed with me for 2 lifetimes. You've made me wish I was dead. Miserable beyond words. I don't need this favor. Chu Yang laughed. If you don't ask me to kneel, I should. But I should kneel. Just as you said, your strength, seniority, and achievements, any one of them is worth me kneeling. If you ask me to kneel, I won't. The figure snorted and said, your words are ridiculous. The previous Calamity Sword masters all knelt to me. You're the only one who doesn't kneel? Are my words ridiculous? Not at all. They did kneel, but I'm not them. Chu Yang said indifferently, I have my own pride. A man has gold under his knees. He kneels to the heavens, the earth, and his parents. A man has pride in his heart. A man has pride in his bones and heart. I won't kneel. Chu Yang was originally an extremely arrogant person. But the miserable experiences he had in his previous life had made him extremely cautious in this life. He was afraid that he would have any regrets, tragedies, and regrets in this life. So, he had always been cautious in his words and actions. He was afraid of making any mistakes. Perhaps Chu Yang himself didn't know that his heart was filled with many repressed emotions. But at this moment, this person in the white figure only used a few words to ignite all the repressed emotions hidden in the depths of his heart. So much so that all of it burst out at once. One thought to become iron, one thought to become steel, one thought to become metal and stone. Even in the face of such a powerful master of the universe, I won't kneel. What can you do? Kill me? Death is not a big deal. I won't kneel to you even if I die. I won't kneel. Normally, Chu Yang would assess the situation. However, at this delicate moment, the fire in his heart was burning more and more fiercely. It was already completely uncontrollable. He no longer had any scruples. He spat out everything that was on his mind. Unexpectedly, the white figure began to chuckle. Even if it was a laugh, it was filled with an awe-inspiring evil aura. Somewhere far away, at the top of a mountain, in the misty white clouds, a stone table and a pot of wine. The surrounding immortal spiritual energy shuttled back and forth. The purple energy of the great Tao shuttled back and forth. This was no longer the mortal world. It was the peak of the universe. In this supreme place, all living creatures could only look up from afar, burn incense and worship. They could never reach this supreme and sacred place. But at this moment, the smell of wine filled the air. How could such a sacred place be reduced to a wine shop? A white-robed man and a black-robed man were sitting opposite each other and drinking. There was only a small wine cup in front of them. A wine pot floated up automatically and poured wine down. After a long time it still wasn't full. But it was difficult to spill any wine. This was a sacred place to begin with, so it was reasonable for strange things to happen here, so it wasn't strange at all. Hey old black, take a guess. Will I kneel or not? The white-robed man laughed. Third update, supplement update, chapter 5. Translator, Starve Cleric Editor, Starve Cleric. Chapter 1603. The man in white was dressed in snow-white clothes. He had black hair and a handsome face. He was actually a peerlessly beautiful man. However, no matter how serious and righteous his expression was, there was always an unconcealable sense of wickedness mixed in with his eyebrows, eyes, and expression. Not only did this sense of wickedness not make people feel disgusted, but it also made people feel that he had a unique charm. This charm was indescribable. In any case, people did not dislike it. In fact, they liked it very much. On the other hand, the man in black opposite him was dressed in black. His appearance was also extremely handsome. Only his eyes were like an eagle's. They were breathtaking. In addition, there was an awe-inspiring murderous aura all over his body. His arrogance soared into the sky. He did not hide the feeling of looking at the world as a toy and seeing all living things as grass. These two people made others feel that they were completely out of place. They were two completely opposite types of people. Even if they were to forcefully gather together, they would probably fight until the sky and earth were turned upside down. But now they were sitting at the same table and drinking wine. The man in black stretched out his finger and seemed to casually swipe in the air. With a grab, the space was torn. Then, the situation in the tribulation space, which was tens of millions of miles away, appeared in front of him. After looking at it, he snorted and said, "Well, according to my estimation, he'll still have to kneel in the end." Kneel? Why do you think so? The man in white smiled evilly. Over the years, how many so-called heroes have we seen? Which one of them didn't face death with equanimity? But in the end, didn't they all kneel one by one? When has there ever been an exception? No matter how wonderful a person is, it's nothing more than this. The man in black snorted and mocked. So what if he's arrogant? As long as you let him have a taste of your methods, he'll know that arrogance is actually a burden. He can't afford to pay the price of being arrogant. Well, what if he doesn't kneel in the end? The man in white tilted his head. That's absolutely impossible. The man in black shook his head decisively. Nothing is absolute in the world. Maybe something will happen that will surprise you and me? Old Black, do you want to make another bet? The man in white revealed a smile that was brewing a conspiracy. Bet. The black-clothed youth raised his eyebrows and squinted. No, at least not with you. You bastard, you've always been thinking of ways to deceive people. I won't fall for your tricks. I won't bet. The young man in white said with disdain, Are you afraid of my schemes or are you afraid of losing? What a joke. The black-clothed young man raised his eyebrows. I am a dignified, don't be so serious. Do you dare to bet or not? Don't talk about schemes and machinations. Let's be straightforward today and bet on whether he will kneel or not. The young man in white said, I bet that he won't kneel. If that's the case, I'll take the bet. I bet he will kneel in the end. The black-clothed youth slammed the table. Wait a moment. The gambling house has already been opened and the gambling rules have been set. But we haven't talked about the stakes yet. If he really didn't kneel, I want your netherworld fruits. 10 of them. The young man in white chuckled. Also, let's bet on this little guy. You look down on him. If you lose in the end, you have to inject a trace of your netherworld chill into this little guy's body as compensation. How about that? The black-clothed youth said angrily, What are you talking about? A little ant kneeling down and you want to bet 10 of my netherworld fruits? And who does he think he is? He actually wants a trace of my netherworld chill as compensation? You're simply asking for too much. Bah, no way. The young man in white said indifferently, It's fine if you don't dare to accept this bet. But if you're willing to bet the netherworld fruits, I'll bet 10 heaven-earth arcane yellow fruits with you and add a 5 directions world sword. The black-clothed youth was stunned. Well, you're willing. Are you really so sure that he won't kneel? The young man in white looked up at the sky as if he didn't want to answer. Okay, I'll bet. But I have 2 other conditions. Say it. First, I want you to use all means to force him to kneel. Don't show any mercy. This is the basic requirement. Of course. Even if you don't say it, I won't break the rules I set. Second, I want 475 heaven-earth arcane yellow fruits. I don't want the 5 directions world sword. The black-clothed youth asked for too much. Motherfucker. In such a sacred place, the young man in white, who was the supreme ruler, jumped up and said, Motherfucker. You're not greedy but quite ruthless. You're only offering 10 fruits and you want 475 fruits. Do you have any conscience? Don't you know what fairness is? I'm the most fair person. If you're willing to raise the stakes, I'll raise the stakes too. A total of 20 netherworld fruits. How about that? The black-clothed youth rolled his eyes. You're just a wife. It's useless to ask for more. Besides, you know that my fruits are not comparable to your heaven-earth arcane yellow fruits. You've been thinking about it for so many years. This time, I'm making an exception to make this bet with you. If you don't want to bet, forget it. If you miss this chance, I'll make sure that you won't be able to get it again. The young man in white snorted. He rolled his eyes and didn't say anything. He seemed to be thinking. Young man, I'm saying this for your sake this time. The black-clothed youth turned hostile. You know that I have a lot of wives. I have 475 wives. 1 for each of us, right? This thing can't be distributed equally. If I don't give it to anyone, I'll die. Your heaven-earth arcane yellow fruits can ripen in 300 years. Once they ripen, you'll have thousands of fruits. But my netherworld fruit takes 10,000 years to bloom and 10,000 years to bear fruit. It only ripens once every 30,000 years, and there'll only be 100 fruits at a time. Do you think you're at a disadvantage? Besides, even if you don't lose the heaven-earth arcane yellow fruits, will you not give them to your wives when they ask you for them? No matter how you look at it, you're the one who has the advantage. What else can you do? The black-clothed youth mercilessly exposed the hypocrisy of the other party. All right. The white-clothed youth reluctantly said, I'll let you take advantage of the bet this time, but I'm telling you the bet is over. You can't go back on your words. My words are like the wind. Heaven and earth are my witnesses. Diske. Why would I go back on my words? Worry about yourself. I'm a dignified. Stop. Stop right now. The white-clothed youth looked like he had a headache. Ever since you heard the words dignified 3,000 years ago, you've been saying dignified for 3,000 years. Fuck 475 wives. Why aren't you tired to death? So it's a deal? It's a deal. Junie Yin? You can't go back on your words. Bah, you still have the nerve to call yourself a June. Same to you. On the other side, inside the tribulation space, the faint white shadow smiled evilly and said, You really don't want to kneel? What if I insist on making you kneel? Chu Yang smiled, Why don't you give it a try? The white shadow smiled amusedly and said, Give it a try? What an interesting suggestion. Chu Yang laughed, If you have the ability to make me kneel willingly, I'll kneel to you every day in the future. The white shadow smiled eerily, You're so small, yet you dare to call yourself a Junie Yin? Really? I haven't heard anyone call themselves a Junie Yin in front of me for so many years. This feeling is really quite fresh. Chu Yang's smile became more and more charming. I'm very honored to be able to help you find this feeling that you haven't felt for a long time. Both of them were smiling and their smiles were unusually bright. But in their bones both of them were arrogant. Tit for tat. Chu Yang made up his mind. My cultivation is naturally not as good as yours. It's not an exaggeration to say that we're worlds apart. But my confidence and arrogance are not inferior to yours. Kneel? I won't kneel even if my bones are broken. The white shadow sneered and suddenly shouted, Kneel. Along with a soft shout, an unprecedented pressure suddenly enveloped the top of his head. It was as if the white shadow in front of him was an ancient demon god, and Chu Yang himself was the most humble ant. He couldn't help but want to kneel down. Chu Yang snorted. The moment this thought came up, he suddenly raised his head and shouted, I'm Chu Yang. I've traveled thousands of miles alone, and I've conquered the world with my bare hands. I'd rather die than bow my head to thousands of riders. In my heart, I'm the most important. I'm the only one. I won't kneel. Chu Yang's voice was fierce. Following this loud shout, a heroic spirit suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart, causing him to straighten his spine and straighten his bent knees. You really won't kneel? The white shadow smiled faintly. Suddenly, a white light stretched out and pressed on Chu Yang's head. In this space, Chu Yang was essentially in existence in the form of a spirit. Now, when the white light pressed on Chu Yang's head, it fiercely spat out a force. A mysterious and strange aura instantly enveloped Chu Yang's entire divine soul. Chu Yang's divine soul slowly solidified at a speed visible to the naked eye. Touching it with one's hand, it was no different from a living person's. This level of spirit, even if Chu Yang didn't stop cultivating, it would take at least hundreds of years for him to have a chance to achieve it. Moreover, it was only a chance. If he didn't have enough luck, he might not be able to achieve it even if he spent a lifetime of effort. However, this white light only stretched out its hand, and it made Chu Yang reach such a level in an instant. Moreover, there were no negative effects such as body explosion or chi meridians damage because he couldn't bear such power. This figure was obviously just a projection of that super powerful person. It probably didn't even have 1/10,000th of the power of the real person. But this was the result of less than 1/10,000th of the real person's power. The real cultivation of that person was simply shocking and terrifying. It had reached a level that was simply unimaginable. Going against it could only lead to despair. Chu Yang tried to move his body. His every movement was smooth and smooth. At this moment, his body felt no different from the body outside. His spirit had really completely condensed into a substance. He couldn't help but show a puzzled look. What kind of saying is this? Is it because the mighty person can't bend, so he's trying to tempt me? This is not a small advantage. But if you want me to kneel, there's no room for discussion. However, it didn't seem to be the case. How could it be so easy to take advantage of others? Especially from this evil person. At this moment, the white shadow said faintly, I'd like to see if you'll kneel or not. Today was Teacher Yu's 10th birthday and the few of us went. Your brother had lost a lot of face today. While everyone was drinking, the birthday boy said, I've lost a lot of face these past few days. I was dumbfounded. Everyone asked me about it. The old man looked at me and said, I've read the novel you wrote. In the future, don't say that I'm your teacher when you go out. Others will think that I'm a teacher who misled you. The grammar that I taught you, you used it incorrectly. The rhetoric that I taught you, you used it in a completely different way. The style that I taught you, you threw it into the toilet. I sweated profusely. I was confused. Who would have thought that the fire would spread to me? I was prepared to watch the show. Then the old man said, "Fortunately, the story was well written. But I'm ashamed that I didn't teach you this imagination." I lowered my head sadly. I was really speechless. The old man said again, "If you have time in the future, come here for tutoring. I've retired and have nothing to do. Don't worry. If you don't come, I'll call you once a week." I wanted to cry, but no tears came out. I've left school for so many years and now I'm going back to school again. At the side, my classmates looked at me with the same look of schadenfreude as before. Sigh. I came back with my tail between my legs. I was prepared to act cool in front of the class bell, but in the end I didn't even drink much. I continued to write the second chapter. Chapter 1604. In the next moment, the white light above Chu Yang's head suddenly transformed into a giant hand, and fiercely pressed downwards. Just by exerting force, the bones all over Chu Yang's body suddenly made creaking sounds, as if they would all shatter in the next moment. His legs were trembling like withered grass that could break at any moment. Bean-sized beads of sweat continuously seeped out of his face. This pain had already reached its limit, and was several times more painful than the previous heavenly demon game. I won't kneel. I won't kneel even if I die. Chu Yang's muscles all over his body convulsed as he screamed. Under such pressure, he clearly knew that he could be smashed into pieces in the next moment. If he were to be smashed into pieces at this moment, it would mean that his spirit would be completely destroyed, because his current body was formed by his spirit. Chu Yang also clearly knew that as long as he knelt, it would be a path to heaven. There was no harm at all. As long as he was willing to kneel, everything would be smooth sailing. As long as he knelt, it would be that simple. But Chu Yang's rebellious temper still rose. You want me to kneel and I'll kneel? Who do you think you are? Even if you are the heavenly Tao, if you say I won't kneel, then I won't kneel. If you say I won't kneel, then I won't kneel. I won't kneel even if I die. I won't kneel even if my spirit is destroyed. Kneel? The white shadow shouted softly, and the strength of his hand increased by another notch. The force, which was already abnormally ferocious, took another step forward. It came crashing down with a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Chu Yang suddenly felt that the whole sky was collapsing. All the weight of the world was pressing down on him at this moment. His face was flushed red, and the blood in his body seemed to be about to spurt out at any time. His two legs made a crisp sound, which was a warning that they could no longer bear it. In the blink of an eye, Chu Yang's face turned from red to purple. Under such a powerful and terrifying pressure, his two eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The pressure he was under had reached its peak. It had already reached the highest limit that Chu Yang's body could bear. The so-called profound martial arts principle of, one must not drop a single feather, and one must not increase a single shot, could also be applied here. Chu Yang would be done for as long as he had one more feather or one more shot. However, even though Chu Yang's entire body was trembling, and he could collapse at any time, he was still on the verge of collapse. But, he still clenched his teeth and squeezed out two words from between his teeth, "Don't even think about it." Bai smiled faintly. "You're quite stubborn. Then I'll break your bones. Let's see if you can still be arrogant without your pride." He exerted more strength in his hand and pressed down once more. This time the force was not much stronger than before, but it was more than 100 kilograms of pressure. Off, off, off. The pressure on Chu Yang's body had already reached its peak. His load had already reached its limit. Under the heavy pressure that was beyond his ability to resist, the blood vessels all over his body ruptured and exploded one by one. Streams of blood mist crazily spurted out. At this moment the pain was really indescribable. Originally, when the human body suffered too much pain, it would be affected by the body's self-defense mechanism. It would automatically enter into a state of coma to avoid the unbearable pain. But Chu Yang's body was actually based on his soul, and he had no self-defense mechanism. Therefore, Chu Yang couldn't faint no matter how much pain he was in. His entire body had already bent a little due to the pressure. But he still stubbornly held on. Blood continued to flow from the corners of his mouth, and dripped to the ground bit by bit. He slowly shook his head and still refused to give in. Not kneeling. Just not kneeling. Your body can't bear it anymore, but you still refuse to admit defeat? Then let's do it again. How long can you endure? You have a limit, but I don't. Bai seemed to have no mercy at all. He exerted more strength. This time, Chu Yang's physical strength was completely exhausted and gradually collapsed. Crack. The bones in Chu Yang's legs suddenly broke into pieces. White bone stubble pierced out of his muscles, exposing his body. His body shrank straight down. The bones of his waist and thighs were completely broken, falling straight down and colliding with the bones of his calves, making a sound that made one's teeth ache. Chu Yang suddenly opened his mouth, and blood gushed out like a fountain, mixed with pieces of his internal organs. At this moment he still did not say a word, only stubbornly staying silent. The bones of his legs had already been broken at the first moment. His whole body was bent down, but the whole body was still vertical. His thighs and calves were joined together, turning into minced meat, but his knees were still not bent. Even though his knees were no longer there at this moment. Very good, very good. Bai Yin's eyes showed a hint of appreciation. But now, Chu Yang's consciousness had already entered a state of confusion, and he could not see anything. It was not that the soul could not be confused, but entering a state of confusion meant that the soul would disappear at any time, never to be reincarnated. With such a serious injury and the soul about to be destroyed, even a heavy core could not do anything. Chu Yang was doomed. The white shadow raised his hand slightly, and Chu Yang's body, which was on the verge of collapse, instantly appeared in front of him. He pointed a finger at Chu Yang's chest and a white light flashed. Chu Yang's broken body was instantly reconstructed, and he became a complete human again. Everywhere a finger went, 100 wounds were all healed. The divine finger was nothing more than this. Chu Yang's body was no longer in pain, but his mind was still wandering in the hell-like extreme pain, and he could not come back immediately. In just a moment, the pain Chu Yang suffered was more exaggerated than going to the 18 levels of hell. Bai Yin was not in a hurry this time. He actually waited for Chu Yang to rest for a while, and when his mind was clear, then he said in a mocking tone, "The taste is not bad, right? Kneel or not?" Chu Yang smiled and said in an unusually gentle tone, "Kneel? Kneel your grandpa. Bastard. How dare you talk back?" Bai Yin was furious and his palm pressed down again. "Since you don't want to kneel, then I'll let you have a taste of that wonderful taste again. As long as you are a human, you will have a fear mentality. You can endure extreme pain once, but you may not be able to endure it a second time. As long as your mind is relaxed, your mind will collapse and your heart will collapse. The pain and fear just now were absolutely the limit of what a human can endure. It was already difficult to go through it once, and facing the same kind of suffering a second time, it would be difficult to bear. People fight for their dignity." Unexpectedly, Chu Yang sneered, "Let's have a taste again. Let's have a taste again. Come on, if you always beg for mercy, you are not a real man." Bai Yin sneered, "Is that so? Then let's have a taste a few more times. Whether you are a real man or not has nothing to do with me. When people feel pain for the first time, there is always a thought, and the next moment it will be over. When people have hope, they will have the opportunity to pass through most of the difficulties." Chu Yang's situation was the same. He was sure that Bai Yin only wanted him to kneel and did not intend to take his life. Otherwise, with Bai Yin's strength, he might not even need to use his hands. Just a breath or a look from Bai Yin could kill him. However, for human beings, the real horror was not pain, nor was it physical pain, but it was the will or the spirit. For example, if someone was in a car accident and broke his leg, then although the whole process was painful, as long as he could endure the initial pain, he would be able to bear it. But after he recovered, the second time when he was prepared, the feeling of having his leg broken again was not something that ordinary people could bear. Although it was the same kind of injury, it was several times more painful to the mind. For some kind of pain, all people who had experienced it said, "I would rather die than experience it again." It was because his will, his spirit was already scared, already cowardly. Now Bai Yin was using the same method to deal with Chu Yang again and again. It was not that he had run out of ideas, but that he was using this principle. But Chu Yang's nerves were like iron at this moment. He was crushed again and again, but he stubbornly stood up again and again. This kind of pain, every time he experienced it, the pain would increase by a lot. But he was still holding on, and he endured it again and again. After so many times, even Bai Yin could not help but sigh at little Zhen's ruthlessness. Even he could not subdue him. In the distance, Bai Yin had been watching, and at this moment he could not help but sigh, "This guy has guts." Indeed he has guts. The white-clothed young man nodded in agreement. "Aha, you didn't expect there to be someone more evil than you in the world, did you?" The young man in black laughed as if he was gloating. "Since you can't subdue him physically, then try other methods," the young man in white said. "For example, the spirit." The young man in black was startled. "Spirit injury? He knew that a spirit injury was 100 times more cruel than physical torture. The degree of pain would also increase exponentially. Can Chuyang bear it? In the tribulation space. At the side, the sword spirit trembled all over as he watched Chuyang's spirit being crushed again and again, and then reassembled again and again, and then cut and crushed again and 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 again. The sword spirit could not help but almost collapse to the ground. He did not try to stop it because he did not dare to. He really did not dare to. He was completely unaware of the strength of the white shadow in front of him. The only thing he knew was that the white shadow in front of him was really too powerful. It was so powerful that he could not evaluate or understand it at all. It was even more powerful than his old master, Shui Leihan, although that white shadow was obviously just a doppelganger. The only thing he could feel was that every time Chuyang stood up again, the white shadow and Chuyang would repeat the previous conversation. And Chuyang's persistence also made the sword spirit's hair stand on end. He had never thought that the new master he was following now would be so proud and unyielding. Such a ruthless person, so unyielding. Kneel or not? What do you think? Kneel or not? In your dreams. Kneel or not? Kneel your uncle. If you have the ability, don't let him wake up. Over and over again, aren't you fucking annoying? I miss the evil monarch a little. Even in my dreams, I think of such a lawless protagonist. I am very happy writing such a protagonist. Chapter 1605. Again and again the torture was more vicious and cruel than the previous one. The degree of cruelty and viciousness of this torture had even terrified the sword spirit. He had wanted to admit defeat on Chuyang's behalf more than once. After all, it wasn't a shameful thing to kneel down and worship such a powerful existence. Such a powerful existence should be a target of submission and worship. However, just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, he realized that he could no longer move. He couldn't even open his mouth, let alone speak. He didn't know when the white shadow had taken control of him. For the white shadow, destroying a living being was just a matter of breathing. He was just an ant, how could he hurt him? The reason why Chuyang could be so unyielding was, to a large extent, because the murderous aura in his heart had been completely stimulated by Jianghu. In layman's terms, he was acting in a fit of pique and refused to kneel. Just kneel. As long as you kneel, you'll get a lot of benefits. Until the last time, the white figure seemed to be really tired of this repetitive game. He seemed to be helpless as he advised, "Actually, you clearly know that we are all fighting for our dignity. As long as you kneel down and I win, I will immediately let you walk on the path to the heavens and open the door to the Great Tao. For you, there will be endless benefits. There will definitely be hundreds of benefits. Why bother to gamble your future just for a single breath of air in your heart? Am I not worthy of your kneeling?" Chuyang sneered, "Torture won't work, so you're tempting me? Have you really ignored the real reason why I don't kneel to you? I've never denied that you're worthy of my kneeling. You're even worthy of my worship. But if you ask me to kneel, I won't." The white shadow was a little speechless. "Why are you so stubborn? You don't even know how to make such a simple choice. For a moment of anger, you're willing to give up your future. Are you brainless? Or is your brain moldy?" Chuyang sneered, "Did the previous 8 masters of the Calamity Sword kneel down?" The white shadow said, "Of course." Chuyang sneered, "Then where are they now?" The white shadow was speechless. Chuyang asked, "Are they walking on the path to heaven now? Have they opened the door to the Great Tao?" The white shadow's eyes flashed. For a moment he didn't say anything. Chuyang laughed wildly. He said, "I have never denied your abilities, but do you think you can open the door to the Great Tao as long as you kneel? What was that supposed to mean? If the door to the Great Tao can only be opened by kneeling, then is there any value in verifying such a great Tao? If I have to be a slave in order to embark on the so-called Great Path to the Heavens, then why should I cherish the Great Path to the Heavens? Life is nothing more than a breath. If you don't fight for this, what else can you fight for?" Chuyang laughed maniacally. His voice was like thunder. At this moment, his arrogance, his pride, his domineering arrogance, and his boundless impudence poured out without holding back in the slightest. "I am the sovereign. Only I am the master of myself. Anybody. Don't even think about making me kneel. Even you, the person who created the Calamity Sword, the super almighty of the universe, can't do it." The white shadow pondered for a while and then slowly said, "It seems that you won't kneel? I'll confirm it one last time." Chuyang laughed softly and said, "What else do you need to confirm? You've destroyed my physical body and my divine soul once. Moreover, you've used a very special method to destroy and restore them. After these 15 times. I'm still standing here, aren't I? I won't kneel. That's all. Chu Yang's voice was hoarse and deep. Anyone who had been tortured like this wouldn't have a pleasant voice. However, this hoarse voice was mixed with faint arrogance and endless arrogance. He opened his mouth, revealing 8 neat white teeth. He smiled very amiably and said, "Do you think that after all this I won't kneel? If it were you, would you kneel?" He laughed wildly and said, "I'm not even afraid of this. Who else in the world is worthy of my kneeling?" The white shadow was silent for a while and then said, "That's right. With your bones and arrogance, you don't need to kneel in front of anyone. I'm no exception. In this world, except for your blood relatives, no one is worthy of your kneeling. No one can bear it. Even the sky and the earth can't bear it." Chu Yang laughed and said, thank you for your compliment. Thank you very much." The white shadow's words were tantamount to setting the tone and ending this kneel or not kneel matter. Very good, very good. If you don't kneel in front of me, there won't be any benefits for those who don't respect me. Therefore the road to heaven opened by me has no fate with you. The white shadow smiled slightly and said, "Do you have anything else to say? Do you regret it?" "Yes." Chu Yang said affirmatively and loudly. The white shadow smiled and said, "What?" Chu Yang said word by word, "Chu Yang will engrave today's gift in my heart. I will never forget it. I hope that one day I can fight with your real body and see who's better. Chu Yang will make you my life's goal. I will never forget it and will never slack off." The white shadow laughed and said, "From what I hear, it seems that you're challenging me. You don't want to punish me like this 15 times one day, do you?" Chu Yang grinned and said, "What do you think?" The white shadow laughed so hard that he almost couldn't breathe. After a long time, he suddenly stopped laughing and said seriously, "Good. I'll wait for you. I look forward to that day's arrival." He said seriously, "If one day your cultivation can reach the level that I approve of, I will definitely give you a fair chance to fight. If your cultivation reaches that level, even if you don't come to me, I will come to you." He smiled deeply and said, "Just that. I hope that you won't make me wait too long. I hope that day will come." Chu Yang's eyes suddenly lit up and he said seriously, "It won't be long. That day will definitely come. I will definitely come to you and seek justice." His heart was inexplicably filled with a sense of gratitude. Chu Yang wasn't clear about the true level of cultivation of the white shadow in front of him, but the strength of the white shadow in front of him had already far exceeded Chu Yang's understanding. The only thing he could be sure of was that even Shui Leihan might not be able to withstand a single blow from this white shadow. And this was only the strength that the white shadow showed. Then what level was the strength of the white shadow's real body? He might need 10,000 years, hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years, before he could reach that level. But this white shadow had promised to fight with him. He didn't think that he would never be able to reach the same level. This was already a great show of respect, a rare acknowledgement. When he agreed, he already saw Chu Yang as an opponent worthy of respect. This respect was the most precious thing that Chu Yang had received from him. Would a golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven challenge a mortal? Obviously, that was impossible and unrealistic. Now, the distance between Chu Yang and this white shadow might be even greater than the distance between a golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven and a mortal. But this white shadow had agreed, and very solemnly agreed. This was a kind of magnanimity, a magnanimity that accepted all rivers into the sea. At this moment, Chu Yang actually had the urge to kneel down. Not for anything else but just for this respect that he had for him. Chu Yang really couldn't repay this respect at the current stage. In the distance, 2 people, one in black and one in white, sighed at the same time and heaved a sigh of relief. Both of them were very satisfied with this result. At their level, they had been standing at the top for far too long. It was extremely rare for someone to appear who could surpass their expectations. At the same time, it was also very interesting. The young man in white smiled slightly. "Old Black, you can admit defeat now." The young man in black snorted, "Our bet is that you have to use all your means. Do you only have these means? You dare to say that you won when you didn't use all your strength? I say you lose." The young man in white spread out his hands and said as if it didn't matter, "If you think it's unfair, you can do it yourself. For someone who can even withstand the 1,000 split of the divine soul, I am very interested to see what methods you have to make him willingly kneel." The young man in black grinned and said, "There are many ways to deal with him. You can use his parents, his lovers, and his brothers to force him to kneel. I don't believe that he won't kneel. Don't tell me you can't think of such a simple method. Scram. The young man in white raised his eyebrows and a murderous aura came out. You actually want me to use such a despicable, shameless, and despicable method? Do you think I'm you? Bullshit. Why would I use such a despicable, shameless, and despicable method? I'm asking you to use it. Don't you understand human language? The young man in black raised his hand and slapped the table. The table was unharmed, but the air around it fluctuated slightly. Then, the three brightest stars in the sky suddenly extinguished. In the next moment, countless meteor showers appeared in the sky, with long tails streaking across the sky. It seemed that the meteor shower in the sky was caused by the slap just now. A light slap, a slap that almost left no trace, but the final effect was that the three stars that were far away exploded and turned into meteors. And the table that bore the brunt of it was unharmed. What kind of cultivation was this? It seemed too exaggerated and really exceeded the understanding of humans. How impressive. The young man in white curled his lips. Doing this, are you trying to scare me? I'm so scared. The young man in black snorted. The young man in white smiled faintly. You did this because the founders of the three continents offended you 8,000 years ago. I didn't expect that after 8,000 years, you would still use this as a pretext to get rid of them. And you even used the anger I gave you, tainting me with karma for no reason. Good calculation, admirable. Chapter 1606. The black-clothed youth smiled. At this moment he didn't look angry at all. He just laughed wildly and said, offending me is naturally not the reason for their downfall. What they really shouldn't have done is to incite all the believers to resist and deny you and me. They actually wanted to use the power of faith to go against me. The limit of the power of faith they can absorb is 8,000 years. Then I will wait for them to accumulate to the highest level, and when their confidence reaches the highest level, I will destroy them. Don't you think it's very interesting? The white-clothed youth touched his chin and said, interesting? That's interesting. I have already magnanimously let go of that matter in the past. Only someone like you who came from the dark side of the underground can be so narrow-minded. The black-clothed youth snorted and said, don't think that I don't know what you are thinking. You can't be any better. By the way, you have been constantly compressing time, reversing time, and occasionally going back in time. How is that matter going? Why is there no progress? There aren't many things that can stump you. The white-clothed youth obviously didn't want to talk about that matter. But now that the black-clothed youth asked him directly, he could only sigh and answer, I really have to give it to him. That fatty really gives it to me. He clearly has the spirit of wealth, but he doesn't want to last forever. Every time he is about to succeed, his spirit will awaken, and then he will destroy his own future. I can't wait to extract all the fat in his body. What the fuck is this? Ha ha ha. The black-clothed youth laughed. What a cute fatty. An existence that can defeat you is definitely cute. The white-clothed youth's face turned green. He said angrily, don't change the topic. You lost the bet this time. Quickly fulfill your promise and hand over the bet. Lost? The black-clothed youth muttered to himself. He lowered his head and pondered for a while. Then he waved his finger and shouted, backtrack. With a swoosh, the scene of Jianghu being tormented 15 times in the tribulation space was repeated in front of him again. He looked at Jianghu's expression with rapt attention. He was so serious. He even replayed it 3 times in a row. Then, he shouted, reverse. The scenery in front of him changed and began to move backwards. The whistling sound of the wind resounded, and the strangest thing happened. Jianghu's experiences in his previous life were also rapidly replayed here, and flashed by with shwa 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 sounds. Then it would be Jianghu's life struggle. Along the way, all the magnificent experiences he had gone through. It was like a huge picture scroll that kept unfolding in front of the white-robed men and the black-robed men. Then he looked thoughtfully at Jianghu in the tribulation space. His face was solemn and his eyes were full of admiration. He said, it seems that I've really lost. But I'm very happy to lose. I like this little guy's temperament. The youth in white said, what? Do you see yourself in him? This sentence was obviously a joke. However, the black-clothed young man began to ponder deeply. After a long time he said, that's true. Seeing him being bullied by you and seeing how his path has been so bumpy, I really feel that he is similar to me. It's really about the same. Especially this arrogance. It's a different approach that achieves the same result. The black-clothed youth chuckled. So small. Good bones. Good backbone. So arrogant. The white-robed young man was originally joking, but now that he heard the black-clothed young man say it so seriously, he couldn't help but laugh. That's right. Even I didn't expect that under such a cautious and low-key appearance, there would be such an arrogant and unyielding heart. The black-clothed young man snorted. The white-robed young man said, "Since you think so highly of him, why don't you take him in as a disciple?" The black-clothed young man immediately pondered. After a long time he said, "No, he can't." He raised his eyes and looked at Chu Yang in the tribulation space. He said, "I really don't want him to kneel." The white-robed young man was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Indeed. It would be a pity if he kneels." Then the two of them looked at each other thoughtfully. Both of them saw a certain kind of mystical light in each other's eyes. "He still has one last hurdle." The black-clothed man said, "There's still a bet. If he loses, I'll fulfill it for you." The white-robed young man was full of confidence. "That's for the bet when this guy just reversed time. You'll still lose. This is already set in stone. In fact, you already knew about it. Why bother delaying it?" The black-clothed man smiled bitterly. "I can feel it now. I don't think I've ever won a bet with you. What nonsense is that? It makes me so depressed every time. I won't gamble any more in the future." The white-robed man laughed heartily. "Old Black, the winner will always be the banker. Don't tell me you've only just understood such a simple logic? Who cares about your bullshit banker? I won't gamble any more in the future. After this little guy passes this hurdle, what will happen in the future?" The black-clothed man suddenly asked with interest. The little guy he was referring to was, of course, Chu Yang. "What do you think? Are you interested?" The white-robed man smiled wickedly. The black-clothed man was silent for a moment. Finally he said, "I'm interested. I want to continue watching." Hearing this, the white-robed man fell silent for a moment. After a long time he said, "To be honest, my opinion is the opposite of yours. I feel that we should give up on supporting him and let him walk on his own. Everything is possible. Only a legend that is created by one's own strength is the most exciting legend." The black-clothed man smiled faintly. "You've misunderstood me. I'm just watching. The arrogance and haughtiness in this fellow's bones is too similar to mine. I want to find my own footprints." The white-robed man's eyes shone brightly. He said sharply, "You're really just watching? What if he's about to die in front of you? Or maybe he's already dead?" The black-clothed man sighed and said, "Then that's fate. I won't interfere." The white-robed man's eyes were gentle. "It's good that you think that way. Changing karma and reversing karma might not be a good thing." The black-clothed man said, "Also, you won so many nether hell fruits from me this time. Whether he knows it or not, you should at least give him 2 as a token of appreciation, right?" The white-robed man smiled bitterly. "1 nether hell fruit is enough for him to explode 100 times. Are you going to give it or not?" The black-clothed man's face was unfriendly. "Give it? I didn't say I wouldn't give it. It's his business if he explodes, but it's my business if I give it or not. We can't mix the two." "That's more like it." The black-clothed man snorted and said, "Apart from the nether hell fruit, you should also give him your heaven-earth arcane yellow fruit as a token of appreciation, right? If you don't care about that fruit, give him a few hundred. And that 5 directions world sword of yours, it's useless now, right? Give it to him as well. Consider it as recycling trash." The white-robed man was furious. "Bullshit. Why are my treasures so worthless when they're in your mouth? Didn't you just say you don't care? What kind of bullshit are you talking about now? If you really give him these things, what difference does it make whether he cares or not? Also, these things you said are all mine. Whether they're useful or not is my business. You're using my things as a token of appreciation, aren't you?" The black-clothed man snorted and stood up. "Anyway, it's settled. If you don't give it to me, I won't honor the bet. You think about it yourself. You said it was 10 times of cheating, so I'll cheat once today. Anyway, I won't gamble in the future." The white-robed man was speechless. It seemed that the black-clothed man had gained the upper hand. "After so many years, this is the only person I've found who's similar to me. I don't want to miss it." The black-clothed man's eyes were filled with nostalgia. He said softly, "You know what I mean." The white-robed man was silent for a moment and said, "Okay. I promise you. Since that's the case, you should go and complete the last round with that guy. It's time to end the bet between us." The black-clothed man said with his hands behind his back, "After I'm done here, I'll go to those places and challenge those few senior brothers of yours." "How courageous." The white-robed man was shocked. There was a gloating look in the depths of his eyes. He said, "I wish you success. I'll cheer for you." The black-clothed man waved his hand and said, "You promised this guy. I owe you a favor." The white-robed man was stunned for a moment. Then he suddenly laughed and said, "I didn't expect that the #1 madman in Netherworld would be willing to owe me a favor for this guy. It seems that this guy is really worth a lot." The black-clothed man sneered, "Same to you. Didn't the #1 evil in the world agree to a one-on-one fight with him? What's the big deal about owing him a favor?" The two of them laughed at the same time. In the tribulation space, Chu Yang felt that his divine soul body, which had already solidified, was gradually dissipating, returning to its original soul shadow state. This was not because his cultivation level was declining, but because his divine soul had completely solidified just now. It was because the white shadow had forcibly increased his cultivation level to torture him. Now that things had come to an end, the cultivation that did not really belong to him would naturally dissipate. However, Chu Yang could clearly feel that the speed of dissipation was very slow. Since this energy could be filled up in an instant, it could naturally dissipate in an instant. The reason why it dissipated so slowly was naturally the white shadow's intention. Chu Yang's mind stirred. He used all of his memory and mental strength to clearly remember every state and feeling that was gradually dispersing in his mind. The refining of the spirit was a path that he had to go through. This unexpected experience, or rather, a test, was extremely painful. However, the harvest was equally huge. Firstly, the refining of the spirit body was tantamount to showing Chu Yang a path to heaven. Chapter 1607. As long as he followed this feeling and walked down this path, he would be able to reach the strength of his divine soul just now or even stronger. Secondly, although that energy would inevitably disperse completely, it would still leave some faint traces in his divine soul. Even if it was just a small trace, it would be a great thing that ordinary experts would never dream of. The white shadow watched Chu Yang carefully, sensing the changes in his spirit, but he didn't urge him at all. He was actually waiting patiently. After a very long time, Chu Yang finally finished memorizing it in a serious manner and raised his head. "You're good. Really good." The white shadow's voice was firm. Chu Yang's eyes were calm. He said, "You flatter me." After experiencing that kind of pain, Chu Yang's mind could be said to be unshakable even by thunder. Not to mention a compliment, even if he became the idol of the entire universe. Chu Yang felt that he wouldn't be that excited. "You flatter me? I never flatter people. I haven't been so polite for a long time." The white shadow chuckled. "Because in this world there are very few people who can make me appreciate them. There's no one who can make me speak courteously to them. I'm flattered by your appreciation." Chu Yang smiled faintly. He was really unfazed by honor and disgrace. "Let's not talk nonsense. I didn't come here today to praise you." The white shadow chuckled. "So you don't have to be too complacent." Chu Yang was speechless. What kind of person is this? What kind of thinking is this? When did I become complacent? Besides, I didn't say anything. You were the one who kept talking. You've got the first 8 pieces of the disaster sword, but do you know where the sword spirit is? The white shadow asked blandly. When the white shadow said this, the sword spirit's body trembled. A trace of despair appeared in his eyes. That was the most hopeless expression. "Where is the sword spirit?" Chu Yang's eyes lit up. His interest was piqued. The sword spirit. It can be said to be far away, but it can also be said to be right in front of you. The white shadow said indifferently, "It depends on what you do. If you want, you can get the sword spirit right now. Do you want it?" Chu Yang's eyes revealed a doubtful look. "I created this calamity sword with my own hands. You can only unleash 1/10,000th of its power." The white figure smiled. "The key lies in the sword soul." Chu Yang said, "I'd like to hear the details." Bai Yin's eyes flickered as he said, "I'll explain it in the simplest way. For example, this little phoenix in front of you." He pointed at the sword spirit. "Phoenix?" Chu Yang looked at the sword spirit in confusion. Chu Yang had already guessed this. The sword spirit's attitude towards the dragon clan and the phoenix clan was very strange. He almost did everything he could to suppress the dragon clan. On the other hand, he also endlessly praised the phoenix clan. Chu Yang had already vaguely sensed this. It was only today that it was confirmed by the white shadow. "I wasn't the one who captured the true spirit of this phoenix." The white shadow's voice was calm and carried a hint of disdain. But he already existed when the calamity sword was first formed. Furthermore, he was sealed in the Calamity Sword land, as the guide of the Calamity Sword's master. So this phoenix is actually the sword spirit of Calamity Sword, Bain said in a low voice. The sword spirit is the sword spirit? How can that be? The two are the same. Chuyang suddenly raised his head. The sword spirit couldn't bear it anymore. His whole body trembled violently. The two are naturally not the same. The sword spirit isn't the sword spirit yet. Bain said slowly, but if you want him to be, then he is. The sword spirit can transform into the sword spirit at any time. Chuyang pondered. Because I'm here. I only need to disperse his true spirit and completely merge it into the Calamity Sword. Then he'll be the sword spirit. This is very simple for me. Bain said softly. His voice was faintly oppressive. So, as long as you nod your head, you'll immediately have the complete version of the Calamity Sword. Your strength will be many times stronger than now. In the entire Chongtian, no one will be your opponent. Am I clear? Chuyang pondered for a moment and said, Your Excellency, it's simple. I still don't understand the mystery. Bain said, You don't need to understand the mystery. It's not important. You just need to know that you can get the sword spirit. That's enough. The rest is not important. But according to what you just said, I believe there's another way to get the sword spirit. What's that? Chuyang said calmly. The other way is as difficult as climbing to heaven. I don't recommend it for you. Bain's eyes sharpened. Even if you sealed this phoenix into the Calamity Sword that day, you may not be able to meet this condition. The sword I made is not something that can be merged with just anyone. If you choose that path, the complete Calamity Sword may no longer be a help. Instead, it may be a great obstacle for you to reach the peak of the Great Tao. Chuyang's eyes were burning like flames. How difficult is it? What's the method? Please tell me. Bain smiled. That method is even simpler. You'll have to use your own body to refine it. This time he knew that Chuyang would be even more confused. Without waiting for Chuyang to ask, he continued to explain, a divine sword has its own life and spirituality. The Calamity Sword was originally created by me, and I gave it its initial life. However, it didn't grow in my hands. In this way, how many experiences do you have? Chuyang nodded. He more or less understood what Bain meant. He even vaguely guessed the true meaning of, use your own body to refine it. A sword can also reach the peak. The Calamity Sword has such potential. However, its growth requires its master to nurture it with his own mind. Only after going through thick and thin with it, can it become a sword master. However, the path of the sword master is naturally filled with endless bloodshed. Until he reaches a certain level of strength, the sword itself will also devour everything that can be devoured. When all the conditions are met, the sword master can slash out his own unique killing intent and refine the sword as his own second primordial spirit. At that time it will be the true sword soul. The invincible sword spirit in the world. At that time you'll know your true Tao. Bain said lightly, and you'll be able to see the other side of your life. However, that will be a period of eternity. It will be so long, that even the so-called gods in your world may not be able to wait that long. That's a path that requires great opportunities. You'll have to seize every opportunity to improve your chances. And those are things that you need to grasp, choose, fight for, or create and then grasp. When Bain said this, Chuyang lowered his head and became silent. He didn't say anything for a long time. The despair in Sword Spirit's eyes became more intense. But that's too troublesome. I really don't recommend you to choose that path. Moreover, when your cultivation reaches that level, although your power will be doubled with a sword, you'll be immortal even if you don't have a sword. Bain said slowly, the easiest way right now is to scatter the sword spirit and turn it into a sword spirit. In this way you can immediately increase your power and be invincible in the world. You won't lose anything. You'll just have to sacrifice this little phoenix. Actually, it's a coincidence. If I'm not here, you might not be able to scatter the sword spirit on your own with your cultivation. But with me here, everything will be simple. You're really lucky. Maybe you'll have some feelings for each other because of your time together, but he's just a shadow after all. As long as you sacrifice him and turn it into a calamity sword, although it won't be as powerful as the sword spirit divine weapon I just mentioned, it'll still be the best weapon in the world. The white shadow said, the choice doesn't involve the great Tao. It doesn't matter what you choose. It's up to you to choose the easy one or the difficult one. I still recommend you to choose the former. After all, it's your destiny to meet me, a rare destiny. Chuyang didn't say anything for a long time. The calamity space was completely silent. After a long time, Chuyang asked, What if I die? Bai Yin said lightly, if you don't exist anymore and your divine soul disappears, then the sword spirit will also scatter. After 10,000 years of nourishment, the little phoenix can still reappear and grow step by step. That's all. Chu Yang smiled faintly, that's all. It's a cycle. The first 8 Calamity Sword Masters all chose this, didn't they? They also met you and encountered a great opportunity. Bai Yin said, your problem isn't important. All of this is understandable. You and your brother are destined to have a bumpy life. The sooner you have enough strength, the sooner you can protect yourself. Isn't it worth sacrificing an unrelated sword spirit to ensure the absolute safety of your brother and all your family members? Chu Yang turned to look at the sword spirit. The sword spirit's face was full of numbness. At this moment, the sword spirit had recovered all his memories. The first 8 times he sacrificed himself like this. Chu Yang was naturally a person who valued friendship and righteousness. But how many of the previous 8 Calamity Sword Masters didn't value friendship and righteousness? Which one of them wasn't an extraordinary man? But after a fierce battle of thoughts, he was still abandoned. The sword spirit didn't have too much resentment in his heart. He only felt a little sad and desolate. After all, he was just a spirit. Sacrificing himself, a sword spirit who couldn't see the light of day, for the sake of his brother was a reasonable choice. He could only blame himself for being a spirit. Especially when he was a spirit who couldn't resist his master. In essence, he was a slave whose life and death were controlled by his master. Who would care about the life and death of a slave? Chu Yang lowered his head and didn't say anything. Bai Yin wasn't in a hurry. He didn't urge Chu Yang to make a choice. After a long time, Chu Yang said softly, I've always cherished the life of my family members. Bai Yin's eyes moved. Chapter 1608. The sword spirit's face was expressionless, and his eyes were expressionless. He was no longer worried, afraid, or in despair. Anyway, he was destined to be abandoned. What was the use of worrying? Accept your fate. You've gone through such a process many times. You've experienced too much loneliness and you've gradually gotten used to it, but after being scattered this time, I'm afraid that I won't have a complete consciousness in this lifetime. Chu Yang continued in a low voice, I also cherish the lives of my brothers. He paused and said, I cherish the lives of my lovers even more. And the lives of my friends. I also cherish them. Chu Yang slowly raised his head and said, I can pay any price for these people. If you used these to threaten me to kneel just now, I would have done so. The sword spirit is just a soul. I know this. I know it better than anyone else. He exists because of this sword. I also know this. To me, he has no ability to resist. I also know this. Chu Yang's voice became low. The sword spirit's expression actually showed some confusion. But I've never treated the sword spirit as an empty soul. I've never treated him as a slave without any ability to resist. My brothers can risk their lives for me, and I can also sacrifice my life for my brothers. Chu Yang said softly, but before this, the sword spirit has saved my life countless times. He's my friend. In the past, in the present, in the future, and forever. My brothers outside are brothers and my friends inside are also friends. Chu Yang suddenly raised his head, and his eyes revealed a threatening light. He said, if I sacrifice the sword spirit, I can easily obtain invincible strength. This choice is very easy. But I can sacrifice the sword spirit, but I definitely won't sacrifice my friends. Invincible strength, I may still have it in the future. But if I lose this friend, I won't have it anymore. Chu Yang said seriously, I'm not the previous 8 masters of the Calamity Sword. So, I won't let the sword spirit be the sword soul. Even if I don't have a sword soul forever, I'm still Chu Yang. The more Chu Yang spoke, the clearer and more resolute his voice became. Also, I once promised my friend that if he could form a complete physical body one day, we would fight side by side and stand openly under the blue sky and white clouds. When he said this, the sword spirit trembled all over. However, it was not out of fear but out of excitement. His body flickered with red light, and an extremely intense emotion seemed to be burning within him. Is this your choice? Bai Yin's eyes flashed with an indescribable light. Is this your choice? Chu Yang smiled, yes. You don't regret it? There's no medicine for regret in this world. Bai Yin pressed. I, Chu Yang, have never regretted my actions. Chu Yang raised his sword-like eyebrows. The white shadow laughed. Good. Suddenly he laughed loudly and rose from the ground. He actually left just like that. In that instant he had already disappeared without a trace. All of this was like a dream. Only the white shadow's voice came from afar. Not bad, not bad. I hope you will never regret the decision you made today. I will watch you walk down this path. Chu Yang silently said in his heart, I won't regret it. For my friend, how can I regret it? Bai Yin laughed and said, finally I'll tell you something good. In the tribulation space there's a reward for you. However, you need to reach a certain level before you can take it out and use it. Ah. Little one, remember to cultivate well. Don't forget that you still have a battle with me. Chu Yang's heart sank. Even if you forget that battle, I will still stand opposite you. I will show you my sword. I will show you my moves. Bai Yin laughed loudly. His laughter shook Chu Yang's heart. His last words came from afar. Next time you see me, call me Big Brother June. Chu Yang smiled. It won't be too late to call you Big Brother after I defeat you. The white shadow's voice finally disappeared in a burst of arrogant laughter, and there was no response from him anymore. Chu Yang opened his eyes and saw the sword spirit standing in front of him. The sword spirit's face was full of excitement, and his whole body was trembling. He almost couldn't speak. Chu Yang laughed and patted his shoulder. You don't have to be so touched. I'm not that great. I don't want you to be fooled by me. Actually, I was just coaxing him to leave. I wanted that white shadow to get out of here as soon as possible. The pressure from facing him is too great. Actually, my real reason is, I want to have a real sword spirit. I want to forge a real sword spirit myself. I want to see what kind of sword spirit that can cut out murderous spirit looks like. Chu Yang smiled. Since someone can do it, I believe I can do it too. Moreover, I need my own Tao, a Tao that belongs to me. He suddenly smiled curiously and said, there's one more thing. I really want to see your appearance as a phoenix. Will you be as gorgeous as the legends say? Then he laughed. The sword spirit almost choked. He nodded repeatedly. In fact, how could he not know this? Chu Yang said this to comfort himself. He didn't want to take this matter to heart. Because, under the deterrence of the white shadow, no one could say anything that went against their heart. This was a spiritual aura that was specially set up by a powerful person. No one could avoid it. In that kind of situation, as long as one said something, it would be the truest reflection of one's heart. There was absolutely no possibility of lying. It was only in this way that Chu Yang's words were truly precious. The previous few tribulation sword masters had pondered in such a situation. They felt that they couldn't be compared to their brothers and relatives. Therefore they chose to turn themselves into sword spirits to increase their strength. Then they would become invincible in the world. From now on, the sword spirit will only be loyal to the sword master. I have no regrets. The sword spirit stood in front of Chu Yang solemnly and slowly bent down seriously. At this moment, Shui Leihan's figure flashed across the sword spirit's heart. But the sword spirit didn't hesitate at all. He chose Chu Yang because Chu Yang was the sword spirit's master. More importantly, Chu Yang was his friend. Here there was respect. The sword master said that I'm his friend. Everyone else was using me. Everyone else was trying to destroy me. Only Lord Chu Yang let me go and saved me. He even gave me unlimited hope in a future. Although I'm just a spirit, I know who's good to me and who's bad to me. I have a heart. The most important thing is that I have a friend. I have a friend, Chu Yang. The sword spirit was so excited that he almost couldn't control himself. But he saw Chu Yang touch his nose and ask himself, by the way, I don't know. Are you a male? Or a female? Do you have that thing? Get lost. The sword spirit, who was feeling touched, was fuming with anger. I'm the same as you. I'm a male. As he said, he suddenly lowered his head. Actually, I don't have that thing now. My real gender can only be revealed after my godly soul is completely condensed and I find a suitable host. But my real body is indeed, I understand. When your godly soul is fully condensed, I'll find a female phoenix for you to satisfy that thing. Chu Yang touched his chin. If that's the case, I'd rather die. You bastard. The sword spirit was furious. He didn't care whether he was a master or a friend. Ha ha ha. Chu Yang laughed. On a distant mountain top. The bet is over. The result is obvious. You've lost again. The white-robed man laughed evilly. So what if I lost? I'm more willing to accept this result than to win. The black-robed man snorted and said, You've given him all the bets, right? What do you mean? Am I the kind of person who plays tricks behind the scenes? The white-robed man felt wronged and grimaced. Aren't you? The black-robed man rolled his eyes. Am I? Aren't you? Haha. The two of them laughed at each other. This time I fulfilled my wish. The white-robed man smiled easily. Chu Yang's godly soul is already qualified. His temperament is also qualified. It's not easy. It's really not easy. The black-robed man sighed, which was rare. Although he's qualified, but there are also quite a number of fully qualified people who died prematurely, the white-robed man shrugged. Their deaths have nothing to do with us. That's true, but what you said is also. Forget it. Let's leave it to fate. The black-robed man turned his head and looked. There was a fluctuation in the air. The white-robed man shook his head and said speechlessly, "Remember not to interfere. I know better than you." The black-robed man was a little angry. "I'm just looking. Looking? You're really boring." The white-robed man rolled his eyes. "I can't be bothered to be angry with you. Do what you want. Let's go. I promised my wives to bring them to my hometown to play." The white-robed man scratched his head. "How many years has it been? Maybe we'll have to go back in time again." The black-robed man said mercilessly, "Your wives don't seem to be simple. Do you need to do it yourself?" The white-robed man snorted. "I seem to remember that in my hometown, someone was beaten to the point of running away in a sorry state." The black-robed man was furious. "Fuck your mother's bullshit. I was shifting my strategy at that time. If I meet that guy from back then again, I'll definitely beat him to the point of looking for his teeth on the ground." The white-robed man shrugged his shoulders and said mockingly, "Yes, if you can't beat him to the point of looking for his teeth on the ground, you'll shift your strategy again, right?" The black-robed man was furious. "Why do I find you so unpleasant? You provoke me again and again. Do you want to fight?" I don't dare. I'm too scared of you." The white-robed man said lightly, "Do you want to look for his teeth at my place first? You know, my place is the most spotless. If it's contaminated by your teeth, it's really—" The black-robed man rushed over with a punch. The white-robed man blocked it. With a swoosh, the two of them flew into the sky. Just like back then, one black and one white opposed each other. Chapter 1609. Just as Chu Yang made his final choice, the 10 beams of white light that connected heaven and earth finally came crashing down from the sky above the elf forest. The centermost beam entered Chu Yang's body with a boom. As for the other beams, one turned into a sword and rushed into Gu Duxing's body like lightning. Another one turned into a long saber and rushed into Dong Wuxiang's head. The other beams entered the bodies of Mo Qinji, Jiamo, Luo Kadi, Rui Badong, Ao Shiyun, Xiedan Xiong and Mo Qingwu. 10 beams of white light, 10 people. Not a single one was missing. Only when the white light found Mo Qingwu did the eyes of the brothers flash with extreme surprise. Even Mo Qinji was no exception. If they still didn't know that the last tribulation was Mo Qingwu at this point, how retarded would they be? At this moment, no one had the time to speak. The only thing they could feel was a surge of energy rushing into their bodies. Then, their cultivations began to soar rapidly. The pure energy was like the waves of a river, each wave higher than the previous one, as if it was endless. The brothers circulated their energy with all their might. They didn't have time to think about anything else. All of them were flushed by the extremely fierce and pure energy as if they were drunk. Mo later looked at the person in front of her enviously, but her divine sense spread out in all directions. Right now, everyone was improving and she was the only one left to guard. Her responsibility was very heavy, and she couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Besides, what was she disappointed about? Her husband, Dong Wuxiang, was also here. If he improved, wouldn't it be equivalent to her improving as well? Mo Later's body shook. She turned into a wisp of black smoke and rushed to the top of a tall tree. She monitored all the movements within a few hundred miles. She didn't dare to be negligent at all. 3 days later. "Brother Yu, are you really not going out with me?" Chu Yang stood at the entrance of the underground city of elves and looked at Dukyu. "I will go out." Dukyu chuckled. "But I can't go with you. There are some things that I can't say to my brothers. Besides, all of you are already second-grade supreme martial artists. In the entire continent, it's not that there aren't many people who can resist all of you at the same time, but definitely none. I can be at ease now." Dukyu cupped his fists. "Brother, take care. Take care." Chu Yang sighed in his heart. Dukyu really didn't have the slightest interest in the heavenly imperial court. "Brother Yu, you know how to find me if something happens." Chu Yang's body floated upwards. "Let's get drunk some other time. We're not going home until we're drunk." Chu Yang's silhouette had already disappeared before his voice had even faded away. He had left without the slightest hesitation. I was wrong in this matter. But I had no other choice. Mo Tianji is still plotting against me. And Dong Wuxiang is still waiting to fight with me. So, how can I go out with you this time? Duke Yu looked in the direction where Jun Imosia had left. He shook his head and laughed bitterly. He muttered, I should also bring Alu here. Firstly, I'll settle the grudges between the Jun family. Secondly, I'll be able to settle down here. With a flash, he disappeared. Chu Yang was walking in a completely different direction from Chu Yang's. Two completely opposite directions. Now the ground had already exploded. The light pillars in the sky had disappeared because they had been absorbed into their bodies. Although the light pillars had disappeared from sight, it didn't mean that they had truly disappeared. Everyone was trying their best to digest the benefits brought by the white light. Every white light was the purest collection of spiritual energy. Moreover, there wasn't a single bit of leakage during the absorption process. It belonged to whoever it belonged to. Moreover, it didn't have any conflict with one's cultivation. They couldn't even finish absorbing it. Everyone sat cross-legged and tried their best to absorb the pure spiritual energy. Because there was too much spiritual energy, all the bottlenecks were broken through one after another. Naturally, their own realms were also upgraded continuously. Waves of tyrannical auras of breakthroughs were constantly erupting. As a martial artist, it was already the limit to break through once in a closed-door cultivation. Very few could break through multiple realms consecutively. And it was even more rare for many people to break through at the same time. A quiet environment for cultivation was the minimum requirement. However, the two most basic understandings had been broken today. Not only did they improve together, but they also had to break through continuously. Was this a myth? Legend? Legend? These words couldn't describe the scene in front of them. At least within a radius of 1,000 miles, as these dangerous auras slowly spread, birds and beasts completely disappeared. Not only were they scared away, but many were directly scared to death and died from the shock. Emole was alone above, hiding in the bushes. She looked down extremely carefully and vigilantly at all the movements in the surroundings, protecting everyone's breakthroughs. Her beautiful eyes constantly swept across everyone below. She was really curious. Who would wake up first? Who would be the last to wake up? Perhaps, if the brothers wanted to determine who was better, it would be reflected in these aspects. However, what realm would they break through to this time? Who would be the strongest in the end? As the white light dissipated, everyone had erupted with the aura of breakthroughs many times. An unusually strong aura of a breakthrough suddenly spread out. In that unusually strong aura, Gu Duxing was the first to open his eyes. His eyes shone brightly. Low-grade supreme martial artist. Gu Duxing, who opened his eyes, was completely different from before. At this moment, Gu Duxing was like a divine sword that had been buried for 1,000 years and suddenly appeared in the sky again. That indescribable sense of sharpness made Emolayer, who was far away, feel a piercing pain in her eyes. She actually felt a sense of powerlessness as if she couldn't look him in the eye. The next moment, awe-inspiring sword aura spread out, raging back and forth in the air, shuttling back and forth at will. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Countless trees nearby, when Gu Duxing had just woken up, completely unconsciously spread out and turned into powder. Then the sword aura swept out and flew far away. It seemed like a large swarm of locusts had flown over. However, the destructive power of this swarm of locusts was slightly greater. Wherever it passed, not only was there no life left, there was no life at all. Gu Duxing's mind had completely returned to normal. He stood up and silently pulled out the black dragon sword. Then he floated up to the top of a tree. He restrained his aura, and stood with his hand on his sword to protect his brothers. Opposite him was Emolayer. The moment he woke up, he sensed Emolayer's intentions, so the position he chose at this moment was just right to correspond with Emolayer. Emolayer finally heaved a sigh of relief. To be honest, while Emolayer was happy that everyone had become stronger, she also had some fear in her heart. The extraterrestrial demon was also in this forest, and could even be watching from the side with evil intentions. Although according to Chu Yang, the extraterrestrial demon was quite injured in the previous game, Emolayer still didn't have the confidence to protect everyone present. But now that Gu Duxing had completed his breakthrough and his strength had increased greatly, the burden on her shoulders had been lifted. How could she not be relieved? The second to wake up, greatly out of Emolayer's expectations, was actually Emo Qinggu. A red figure floated and Emo Qinggu stood up gracefully. Her pretty eyes blinked twice, and then she floated up and chose another direction, standing with Gu Duxing and Imole. The three of them formed a stable triangle, preventing any changes from happening. Gu Duxing looked around and couldn't help but be shocked. Mo Qingwu's current realm was actually second-grade supreme martial artist, on par with him. This conclusion was really something unbelievable, but Mo Qingwu was now a second-grade supreme martial artist. This was already an unquestionable fact. This little girl's future is really limitless. Gu Duxing's heart shook. The third person to stop was a vigorous and tyrannical aura that was emitted at a certain moment. It was as if a million troops suddenly formed up at the same time in an empty field. It was majestic and murderous, like a mountain towering into the clouds, unshakable. This was a kind of natural majesty. Such a domineering aura made Imole happy. He had woken up, there was no mistake, he had successfully broken through. No one would be more familiar with this person than Imole, because that person was Dong Wuxiang. The Saber Emperor had woken up. Brother Wuxiang's aura is unparalleled, really impressive. Mo Qingwu, who was at the side, smiled and stuck out her tongue, saying to Imole from afar. Imole smiled and nodded, saying, "It's just that he's a little silly." On the other side, Gu Duxing rolled his eyes, thinking, "You're the only one who said this." If someone else said this, the first one to rush up and get angry would probably be Imole herself. Women were such strange creatures. Towards their men they could give themselves countless nicknames, and even often scold them with hatred. But if someone else echoed her words and followed her to speak ill of her man, the one who couldn't stand it the most would be the initiator. This point was enough to make one break down. So, if a woman gritted her teeth and spoke ill of a man in front of you, don't try to echo her, because you would very easily offend both the man and woman. The result would be that you wouldn't even know how you died. A sentence of flattering agreement could lead to the most ridiculous result. Don't doubt it. The fourth to stand up was Mo Tianji. Regarding this result, Gu Duxing, Dong Wuxiang and the others were still a little surprised. In their hearts, Mo Tianji had never been a battle-type talent. How come this time he was even earlier than the recognized martial arts geniuses Ao Xie Yun and Xie Danqiong? But they didn't know that Mo Tianji had always been particular about convincing people with reason. If he could avoid fighting, he would try his best not to. But it didn't mean that his fighting ability was bad. A wise man could be weak, but he could also have unparalleled abilities looking down on everyone. For example, Tang Xan Xing Diwu Qing Ro, and the master of calculation and manipulation Mo Tianji. If Chu Yang was here, he wouldn't find it strange at all. Mo Tianji was also one of the 12 famous people in his previous life. How could his fighting ability be bad? This was clearly a ridiculous judgment. Chapter 16:10. After Mo Tianji stood up, this continued for a few breaths. No one else stood up. But the few people around him were all focused on guarding. They didn't say anything or do anything else. With these few people guarding the place, the rest of the people would be absolutely safe. Even if all the top experts of the big clans and law enforcement officers joined forces to attack, the four experts, Gu Duxing, Dong Wuxiang, Mo Qingwu and Imole, plus Mo Tianji, who was at the core controlling everything, would definitely be able to successfully stall for time until the brothers came out of seclusion safely. But even so, no one dared to let their guard down. Being able to deal with changes was one thing, but being able to prevent changes from happening was another. Right now, the first rule was only absolute stability. That was all. After a short while, the aura of a breakthrough spread out again. This time the one who completed the breakthrough was Ao Xiyun. At this moment, Duke Xie's body was shining with golden light. His aura rose. Behind him, a divine dragon in golden armor vaguely appeared. Its features were vivid and lively. Ao Xiyun had just stood up when the other two strong auras of a breakthrough also rose one after another. A loud and clear phoenix cry rang through the sky. The figure of a phoenix suddenly appeared. An abnormally hot aura was only slightly released before it was immediately retracted. Rui Badong. The moment he opened his eyes, he realized the current situation. Afraid that the change in his aura would disturb the other brothers' breakthroughs, he immediately restrained his aura completely. The next moment, an incomparably brilliant viburnum flower bloomed between the dragon and phoenix. Xie Danqiong had also completed his breakthrough. After that, only about 2 breaths' time, another 2 auras of a breakthrough descended. GMO and Luo Kadi. The two of them announced their breakthroughs at the same time and stood up from the ground. GMO turned around and saw that everyone around him had already stood up and tried to circulate their own essence energy. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. Wow! Damn it. I'm also a second-grade supreme martial artist now. I'm also a super expert now. Luo Kadi was so excited that he couldn't speak. He cried out twice and flipped 7 or 8 times on the ground. Then he roared in the air, "Awesome! The feeling of a breakthrough is so damn awesome." Mo Tianji said, "Everyone, don't be too excited. Come over here and report your progress first." Could be seen that Mo Tianji was also very excited. Even his voice was trembling. At this moment he was just barely suppressing his excitement. However, this was the true nature of a military advisor. At this moment, if even the master of calculation and manipulation lost control, it wouldn't be a good thing. A moment later, everyone's situation was now clear to everyone. Gu Duxing, middle-grade supreme martial artist, close to peak-grade supreme martial artist, could step into high-grade supreme martial artist anytime. Dong Wuxiang, first-grade supreme martial artist. His cultivation level was roughly on par with Gu Duxing's. Ao Shiyun, first-grade supreme martial artist. Xie Danxiong, middle-grade supreme martial artist. Level. Mo Tianji, low-grade supreme martial artist. Mo Qingguo, low-grade supreme martial artist. His cultivation was only slightly below Gu and Dong, but he was above the other brothers. His progress was the most astonishing. GMO, middle-grade supreme martial artist. He was just on the verge of a breakthrough. Luo Kadi, middle-grade supreme martial artist. He was at the same level as GMO. What was worth mentioning was Rui Badong. Perhaps because his strength was the highest previously, he was already at peak-grade supreme martial artist. In terms of cultivation alone, he was still the top of the group. As everyone reported their cultivation level, Mo Tianji's expression became more and more excited. In the end, his face was flushed red. It seemed that it was getting harder and harder to suppress that excitement and impulse. A king-grade martial artist alone could dominate the lower 3 heavens. An emperor-grade martial artist could intimidate an area in the lower 3 heavens. Above emperor grade was monarch grade, above monarch grade was saint grade, and above saint grade was first-grade supreme martial artist. Now, among his brothers, there were a total of 10 people who were all first-grade supreme martial artist. Even in the upper 3 heavens, how many first-grade supreme martial artists could there be? Not to mention that among his brothers, there were a few who could challenge and even win against those of a higher level. For example, Gu Duxing, Dong Wuxiang, Ao Shiyun, Rui Badong. Although these 4 people were all around the same level now and only Rui Badong was high-grade supreme martial artist, even if they were to face peak-grade supreme martial artists, they would definitely not be a match for them. Perhaps, they would only be slightly inferior to those legendary peak-grade supreme martial artists. And those people, how many heavens were there in total? Even if he stretched out 5 fingers, he probably wouldn't be able to count them all. For example, the Moon Breeze couple, Ning Tianya, Wu Jueqing, the Dharma Supreme and a few others. Yes, it seemed that most of these people were on Tribulation's side. As for the big clans, there were definitely high-grade supreme martial artists such as Xiao Qinyu and Yi Qinshan. But as for those who were peak-grade supreme martial artists, that might not be the case. The big clans could no longer pose a substantial threat to Tribulation now. Or just as the big clans thought, when the 8th fragment of the Tribulation sword returned, the big clans would gradually enter the end of their lives. The track of history would turn again. No matter how they resisted, the final outcome would still be the same. The bleak days of US brothers living with our tails between our legs are finally gone forever. Mo Tianji smiled gently. The smile on his face was like a blooming flower. Before this, the brothers were not strong enough and could only choose to hide in the east, fearing that they would be intercepted. If they were really surrounded, there was no need for the big clans to join hands. Any one of the clans could attack with all their strength, or even a supreme martial artist would be able to completely annihilate them. They really had to be very careful. But now, humph, annihilation? What a joke. Now, it was not certain who would be annihilated. Even if any of the brothers were to go out, they would be considered as big shots in the martial world. When they encountered an enemy, even if the enemy was surrounded by several high-grade supreme martial artists, even if they were weak and couldn't win, they could always escape. Moreover, Boss Chu had foresight. Before this, what he trained the most was the brothers' ability to escape unscathed. Each of them could be said to be incomparably slippery. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were slippery and slippery. If the enemy's number is less than 1, then sorry, please leave your lives behind. The big clans will have to live with the grievances of the past in the future. It has nothing to do with us anymore. This is great. This is really great. Mo Tianji excitedly clenched his left fist and punched his right palm. From now on, Brother Tribulation's name will really sweep across the heavens. We will write a new legend of tribulation. Among the brothers besides Chu Yang, the one who was most worried about everyone's safety was Mo Tianji, who was the brains of tribulation. He had done all he could to ensure the safety of the brothers. In the countless battles in the past, including the Li clan's battle, he had done all he could to prevent any accidents from happening to the brothers. Now that everyone's strength had improved greatly, the fatal weakness of lacking strength in the past no longer existed. Mo Tianji could be said to have truly started to relax. Ah, that's right, we will sweep across the heavens and write a new legend, a legend that belongs to us. The brothers were all so excited that they couldn't control themselves. No one would have thought that the 8th fragment of Tribulation sword that Boss Chu had obtained would bring them such great benefits. This was the so-called reaching the heavens in a single step. Moreover, it was a single step without any hindrance or cushion. Even Gu Duxing, who always had a cold face, had a gentle smile on his face at this moment. Even if he wanted to force himself to keep a straight face, he couldn't. How could he keep a straight face when his heart was bursting with joy? As for the others, they were all so excited that they were squealing. The 3 clowns, GMO, Luo Kadi and Rue Badong, simply curled their bodies into balls and rolled around on the ground. They kept colliding with each other and then bounced off each other before continuing to roll around like 3 rubber balls. Duke Aosier and Duke Yuneo couldn't stop smiling. One could stuff a durian into his mouth. One really wondered if his chin had already fallen off from laughing. Xie Danqiong maintained a reserved smile. Because of his excitement, his flushed face had long betrayed the joy in his heart. Coupled with his handsome face, he looked like a young lady who was about to get married. He was extremely pretty. That's right, pretty. Dong Wuxiang grinned foolishly and touched his black saber. Sometimes he tilted his head, then he tilted his head again, and then he tilted his head again. If Second Master Dong's expression at this moment was drawn by someone, it wouldn't need to be drawn foolishly. Because this was an absolute foolishness that couldn't be faked. In fact, it looked even more foolish than foolishness. It seemed that there was no other expression more foolish than his current one. Mo Qinggu gasped for breath in small mouthfuls. Her beautiful face was flushed red. She was truly a feast for the eyes. She had a unique charm. Mo leaned against Dong Wuxiang and also smiled happily. Then she felt a little depressed. She pinched Dong Wuxiang and asked softly, "What about me?" Dong Wuxiang was so happy that he didn't hear clearly. But even if he did, he might not be able to understand immediately. He asked subconsciously, "What?" "I'm talking about me. All of you have reached the peak level now. I'm the only one who's still at the peak level. The gap is too big." Emole was a little angry. Why did this bastard become deaf when he was happy? But seeing that there were so many people around, she didn't want to be too loud. She could only ask softly, "What are you talking about? Or some boom?" Dong Wuxiang only felt that he was about to explode with joy. For a moment, he actually still didn't hear clearly what Emole was talking about. He heard Emole's peak level as some boom. He couldn't help but scratch his head and grin foolishly. "What are you talking about? Be loud." Emole was already embarrassed. Plus, there was some imbalance that she couldn't tell outsiders. Seeing him being so silly, she couldn't help but fly into a rage. She gathered all her strength and punched Dong Wuxiang's lower abdomen. She gritted her teeth and said, "Pig." "What boom?" Just like that. Chapter 16:11. Dong Wuxiang was caught off guard. Even though he was a supreme martial artist, he still couldn't take it. He was instantly sent flying like a gold ingot. He was still a little confused. "How did you coax?" "It hurts. How did you do that?" Boom. Emole flew up with a flushed face and chased after Dong Wuxiang's flying body. She gave him a series of blows and scolded angrily, "Just like that. Just like that. Just like that. Just like that." Boom. At the side, all the brothers who were so happy that they couldn't tell north from south didn't know what was going on. They all quieted down instantly. What was going on? All of them watched as Emole displayed her might and Dong Wuxiang was being hit here and there like a sandbag. Booming sounds rang out incessantly and Dong Wuxiang's screams rose and fell one after another. They couldn't help but break out in cold sweat and look at each other in dismay. What was going on? "Brothers, you mustn't find a wife like this. You'll really die." This was a classic example. My god, this was too ruthless. Luckily, old Dong was already a mid-grade supreme martial artist. If his cultivation was a little weaker, wouldn't he be smashed into meat paste? Especially GMO looking at Dong Wuxiang being beaten up there, he couldn't help but think of Huyan Aoba. In that instant his whole body trembled. He really could empathize with Dong Wuxiang, and he actually couldn't help but feel a little scared. It seemed that Huyan Aoba, who wasn't much kinder than Emole, she was even more violent. Old Dong's body is already like this, what about me? Oh my god, the more he thought about it, the more terrified he felt. Second Master Ji forced himself to calm down, but he was still tongue-tied. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva and his eyes were a little dazed. He was scared. His legs also seemed to be trembling a little. You're today just like me tomorrow. Boo-hoo, today's matter seemed to have created another super record. A mere mid-grade supreme martial artist beat a mid-grade supreme martial artist into a pig's head without any ability to fight back. She even scared another mid-grade supreme martial artist to the point that his legs trembled and the other 7 mid-grade supreme martial artists to the point that they kept quiet out of fear. Miss Emolayer's achievement was not only unprecedented, but also unprecedented. She was the only one throughout history. How are you going to do that? Accompanied by Emolayer's angry shout, Dong Wuxiang's huge body was kicked out like a shooting star, crashing into and breaking several big trees. Finally, his whole body was embedded in the trunk of the last big tree. Seeing Emolayer turn around and walk over angrily, the brothers all tactfully turned their heads and started to chat as if nothing had happened. What's wrong with asking at this time? Ask why. All of them were people who had run into bad luck and might invite disaster upon themselves. None of them were fools. Wow, your hairstyle is so handsome now. Is that so? Ah. GMO, you're also very handsome now. Very handsome indeed. Yes. Little Wolf has a lot of character now. Gu Duxing is wearing all black today, wow, so cool. That's right. Mo Tianji is laughing like a fool. Such meaningless words were exchanged very enthusiastically among the 7 mid-grade supreme martial artists. Looking at this bunch of shameless people, Emole stomped her feet hatefully. She almost wanted to rush back and beat Dong Wuxiang up again. She would feel aggrieved if she couldn't vent her anger. Sister, what's wrong with you? Mo Qingwu whispered into Emolayer's ear. Brother Wuxiang doesn't seem like someone who would make you angry. Is there some misunderstanding? Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? This bastard. Emolayer was still full of hatred. He's deaf. He deserves a beating. Mo Qingwu's pretty eyes widened. Deaf. How could a mid-grade supreme martial artist be deaf? But even if he was really deaf, there was no need to beat him up. The two didn't seem to be related at all. Dong Wuxiang groaned as he struggled out of the tree hole. Then he limped back. That fierce and domineering aura from before had already vanished into thin air. Instead, it was replaced by confusion as well as a kind of baffling innocence and injustice. He said gloomily, "What's wrong with you?" "What's wrong? What did I do to you?" Hearing this, Emolayer was about to fly up again. This idiot, could he be any more infuriating? Energy? Mo Tianji hurriedly stepped in to smooth things over. Okay, Wuxiang, I have something very important to tell you. Come over quickly. How smart was Mo Tianji? His intelligence was naturally not something Dong Wuxiang could compare to. Although the two of them didn't say the whole story clearly, he could guess it with a turn of his head. Emolayer must have felt that it was unfair because everyone had improved like a rocket while she hadn't and was still stuck at the same spot. She didn't worry about poverty, but she worried about inequality. This was an indisputable matter. In fact, anyone would feel unbalanced in their heart. Furthermore, Emolayer was a super figure who was on equal footing with everyone here in the 3 heavens. Along the way she had never fallen behind. But now she had fallen so far behind. It would be strange if she felt good about it. But Dong Wuxiang was a blockhead, and a blockhead who didn't think about anything due to the extreme excitement of improving. He actually didn't hear what Emolayer said to him clearly. It would be strange if he didn't teach him a lesson. What's wrong? What's so important that you can't say it in front of everyone? Hurry up and say it. I still have something to say to Lei. Dong Wuxiang walked over and asked in a low voice. Sigh. Mo Tianji sighed before speaking. I finally understand what it means to expect better from someone. Why are you so stupid? Do you really think I have something to say to you? I'll be honest with you, your wife is obviously because... As he spoke, he explained in a low voice. Oh. Dong Wuxiang suddenly understood. He finally understood. He hurriedly turned around and ran back. So, I haven't finished speaking. Mo Tianji hadn't finished speaking and this guy had already left hurriedly. He couldn't help but be dumbfounded. I haven't taught you how to pacify her. Why are you in such a hurry? Dong Wuxiang jogged all the way to Amole. He scratched his head helplessly and said, Wife, there's really no way around this. Don't be anxious, don't be angry, and don't feel that it's unfair. Although everyone has improved except for you, there's really no way around this. Before he finished speaking, Amole had already sent a flying kick out in shame. This time she really used all her strength in shame and anger. Boom. Dong Wuxiang was once again sent flying in the air. He flew even further than before and knocked down even more trees. In midair, Dong Wuxiang's face was even more confused. I really completely understood. Why is she still hitting me? What's going on? Women are really hard to please. She hit me when I don't understand and hit me when I understand. Amole covered her face and stomped her feet. She shouted in shame, Dong Wuxiang. You pig. You're really a pig. The other brothers sighed and shook their heads, speechless. You're really a pig to a certain extent. Originally this was a rather private matter. No matter what, Amole was too embarrassed to say it out loud. But Dong Wuxiang's explanation made the whole world know about it and put everything out in the open. How could a girl like Amole get out of this embarrassing situation? Poof. Dong Wuxiang knocked down a few more trees again. He stood up hundreds of feet away and scratched his head, looking confused. He tilted his head and pondered for a long time. He felt that he didn't seem to have done anything wrong. Then he suddenly felt extremely wronged and asked, Why? Why did you hit me again? Upon hearing this question, including Amole and Mo Qinggu, everyone's actions were uniform. They all covered their faces with their hands. They really didn't expect. This guy still didn't understand until now. What kind of innate talent is this? Please don't use a pig to describe this guy. This is obviously mocking other people's pigs. This time, everyone tacitly chose to stand aside and watch Dong Wuxiang's astonishment and injustice. A few enthusiastic people even wanted to step forward and explain, but they were stopped by GMO and Luo Kadi. What a joke. What are you trying to explain? Let's just watch the show. Second Master Ji even secretly started a bet. Let's see how long Second Master Dong can be stupid before he comes to his senses. So, all the brothers who placed their bets went up one after another? Sigh, what a bunch of guys who just want to see the world in chaos. When a brother is in trouble, not only do they not help, they even want to hit him when he's down. Really bad. Mo Qingji looked at this scene and couldn't help but shake his head helplessly. Then he walked over and placed a bet of 100 purple crystals. What should we do next? Xie Danqiong's eyes were filled with boundless eagerness. Everyone had improved their cultivation. Naturally, they had to find an opponent to practice with. Only then could they consolidate their current cultivation. Let's wait for Chu Yang to come up first. Mo Qingji nodded calmly, indicating for everyone to calm down. Hearing this, everyone quieted down. Yes, Boss Chu hadn't come up yet. Everyone had improved so much, but who knew what level Boss Chu had improved to? Who wants to bet with me? Second Master Ji's gambling spirit was triggered. The bet hadn't ended yet, but he actually wanted to open another bet. I bet that Boss Chu is at least high grade now. There are 3 choices for you to bet on: grade, high grade, peak grade. Those who want to bet, come quickly. People here are stupid and have a lot of money. It's a waste not to take advantage of this. Luo Kadi shouted loudly. Then he placed a bet of 500 purple crystals on the grade. According to everyone's experience, as long as Boss Chu improved, he would be about the same level as the brothers under normal circumstances. Besides, it was only the 8th fragment of the Calamity Sword. It wasn't the last fragment yet, so he should be about the same level as everyone else. It definitely wouldn't be much higher. So, choosing the grade was very promising. It was precisely because people shared the same thoughts, their hearts shared the same reasoning. Everyone placed their bets. Most of them were betting on the grade. Only Mo Qinggu, who had unlimited trust in Chu Yang, directly placed a bet of 500 purple crystals on the peak grade. GMO beamed with delight. Little sister Qinggu is really kind. You see that I'm poor, so you're deliberately giving me purple crystals to make up for my deficit. Alright, seeing that this little girl is sincere, I'll give you 10 purple crystals for the peak grade. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.